The 12th of October 1967. That was the day my life shattered into pieces. A bus with failed brakes crashed straight into my wife, Grace, just as she was pushing our one-year-old daughter out of harm's way. Isabella survived, but she saw everything. She saw her mother get dragged, saw her mother's body destroyed. From that horrifying moment on, my daughter never spoke another word. I am James Sullivan, 94 years old, and this is the story of how I tried to piece together a family torn apart by tragedy. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they shake your beliefs. There are stories that, no matter how painful, must be told. I'll go back, way back to the year 1950, when I was still a young man, 19 years old at the time. I lived here on the farm with my father, Colonel Robert Sullivan, and my mother, Patricia Sullivan. The farm was large, the kind you could see from a distance, mostly horses, acres and acres of bluegrass pastures spreading over the rolling hills, green at the right time, filled with grazing horses during the summer. My father inherited everything from his grandfather, and I was to inherit it from my father. That's how it worked in good families. We were people of means, a family known throughout the region. I won't feign a humility I didn't have. We had staff, a good house, imported furniture, a respected name. My father was a serious man, a man of few words. He woke before the sun rose and went to bed long after the moon appeared. Work was his religion, a sacred thing that was not questioned. But he was fair. He treated his employees well, paid on time, and never let anyone go without. I never saw him raise his voice without a just cause. When he spoke, everyone listened. My mother was different. Patricia was elegant, educated at a prestigious boarding school in Virginia. She knew French and piano, but she had a firm way of running the house that left no doubt who was in charge there. Nothing happened without her knowing. Nothing was decided without her opinion. And when she made up her mind about something, rest assured, it would happen exactly the way she wanted. No arguments. That's how that dinner that changed my life came about. It was June 1950. I remember it well because it was cold at night, which was rare around here. My mother called me one Thursday afternoon. I was helping my father check the season's accounts. Boring work, but necessary to avoid being cheated by middlemen. She informed me that the next day we would have important visitors. Dr. Richard Evans and his wife would be coming for dinner and bringing their daughter with them. I knew Dr. Richard by sight. He was a respected doctor in town, a cultured man, an old friend of my father's from before I was born. But it was the way my mother spoke of his daughter that made me understand. It wasn't a common social visit. It was a presentation of a potential bride. She ordered me to wear my best suit to make a good impression. She didn't even ask if I wanted to meet any girl. She simply informed me that the next day I would be introduced to a candidate for a bride chosen by her. I spent the rest of the day dwelling on that. Not that I had a girlfriend or marriage plans. At 19, I'd had a few silly flirtations here and there. Stolen kisses at a county fair dance, but nothing serious. But the idea of being pushed into an arranged marriage bothered me deeply. I imagined a dull girl, too shy, standing like a statue, or even worse, stuck up, full of airs. One of those who studied in the city and came back thinking they were better than everyone else. I spent a sleepless night, tossing and turning in bed. The next day, my mother personally supervised the preparations, as if she were receiving the President of the United States. The table was set with the good china, that white porcelain with a gold rim that was only used on special occasions. Starched white linen tablecloth, silverware polished until it gleamed, thick candles in the silver candlesticks that were a family heirloom. The cook prepared a feast that could feed 10 people. There was fried chicken with cornbread dressing, creamy mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, green beans, and for dessert, there was pumpkin pie, pecan pie, and bread pudding. I put on my grey suit, the only one I had that was appropriate for a formal occasion. I combed my hair with the pomade my father used. I looked in the bedroom mirror and saw a 9-year-old boy, too thin, too serious for his age, looking older than he was. The visitors arrived promptly at 7 p.m. I heard the sound of their car outside, their voices greeting each other, footsteps on the porch. My father greeted Dr. Richard with that controlled enthusiasm of a man who doesn't show emotion easily. I heard their deep laughs, talk of politics and the harvest, I stayed in the living room, nervous, rubbing my sweaty hands. My mother entered, accompanied by a short, plump lady in a dark dress and a pearl necklace, Dr. Richard's wife, Susan, and behind them entered Grace. The first thing I noticed was her navy blue dress, simple, without any embellishments, but well cut, fitting her body perfectly. Short sleeves, a round neckline, nothing flashy, nothing exaggerated, but on her, it looked beautiful in a way I couldn't explain. She was of medium height, neither tall nor short, with straight brown hair, tied in a low bun at the nape of her neck, neatly arranged, fair skin, almost pale from staying indoors so much, as was the custom for a well-bred young lady. And her eyes, my God, her brown eyes, large, expressive, with that sparkle of someone who pays attention to everything around them. She looked straight at me, without lowering her head like a shy girl, and I swore I could read her thoughts. So, this is the boy his mother wants me to meet. We exchanged the usual courtesies, the formal greetings that etiquette demanded. We sat down for dinner. I sat on one side of the long table, she on the other, quite far apart. Our parents sat between us, guiding the conversation as if we were chess pieces they were moving. They talked about the weather, the harvest, horses, national politics, reforms at the First Community Church, those topics adults like to bring up when they want to avoid awkward silences. I could barely eat. I kept looking at my plate, cutting the chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, but every now and then I would look up and catch her looking at me too. Then both of us would quickly look away at the same time, feigning interest in the other's conversation. After dinner, my mother, with that elephantine subtlety she had when she wanted to push things her way, suggested I show Grace the garden. She said it was a beautiful night, that the magnolia trees were laden with blooms. There was no way to refuse without being disrespectful. We went out through the back door that led to the yard. The night was truly beautiful, the sky clear, full of tiny stars twinkling. You could hear the high-pitched chirping of crickets hidden in the grass, the gentle wind rustling the leaves of the trees, the distant barking of a dog from the farmhands' cabins. We walked in silence along the stone path to the magnolia trees at the back of the yard, far from the house. I stopped under the largest one, the one my grandfather had planted decades ago. She stopped beside me, about 2 steps away, respecting my space. I tried to think of what to say, something intelligent, charming, that would impress, some compliment that wasn't too forward. But before I could gather the courage, she spoke. She told me that when her mother said she was going to introduce her to a suitor, she had been terrified all week. She thought it would be some old fat or ugly widower, looking for a second wife to take care of his house and children he already had. She had imagined the worst possible scenario. I couldn't help it. I laughed, and she laughed too, a soft, pleasant laugh. I asked her what she thought now that she had seen me. She suddenly became serious, looked at her own hands, then raised her eyes and looked straight at me, without looking away. I think my mother, for the first time in her life, made a good choice for me. Just like that, a formal introduction turned into a real connection. James had no idea how much that single sentence would come to define his entire life. Keep listening to find out how this simple garden conversation blossomed into an epic and tragic love story. My heart raced in my chest. I felt the blood rush to my face, hot. I didn't know how to respond. I stood there, looking at her, and she looking at me. And the silence between us was no longer awkward. It was something else. It was understanding. It was a promise. It was at that moment, my dear, that I knew that for the first time my mother had hit the mark. It turns out that after that night in the garden, my life changed course, without me even fully realizing it. In the following days, my mother began to organize everything with her usual efficiency. She sent a message to Dr. Richard's house saying she had greatly enjoyed the visit and that she found Grace to be a refined young lady. Dr. Richard sent a message back saying the feeling was reciprocal, all very formal, very proper, as was the custom at the time. I only had that one first encounter with the girl alone. I never had the opportunity again. Then came the rules. Because courtship for people of family wasn't like today, my dear. There was protocol, there was supervision, there was a schedule for everything. My mother made it clear. I could visit Grace at her house on Sunday afternoons after church. I would stay in the sitting room, always with her mother or an aunt nearby. No being alone. No going for walks without a chaperone. And the courtship had a time limit, 2 years to decide whether to marry or not. 2 years seemed like an eternity back then, but looking back now, it flew by. The Sunday visits became routine. I would wake up early, take a long shower, put on my good clothes, and apply pomade to my hair. My father would drive me to town, dropping me off at the front door of Dr. Richard's house around 2 p.m. Their house was beautiful, large, painted white, with blue windows and a wooden fence around it. It had a front garden full of roses that Grace's mother tended personally. I would clap my hands. The housekeeper would open the door and lead me to the sitting room. It was a formal room, with mahogany furniture, heavy curtains, and portraits of her grandparents on the wall. It smelled of floor wax and cologne. Grace would come down the stairs a few minutes later, always neatly dressed, hair combed, a simple but beautiful dress. She would sit in an armchair on one side of the room. I would sit on the sofa on the other side, and her mother, Susan, would sit in a chair between us, doing crochet or embroidery, listening to everything we talked about. At first it was difficult. I didn't know what to say. I would comment on the weather, the morning church service, or some news I had read in the newspaper. She would reply politely, but I could tell she was also uncomfortable with that artificial situation. But gradually we got the hang of it. I discovered that she liked to read. She had studied at a prestigious boarding school in Virginia from ages 12 to 18. She learned French, piano, good manners, everything a well-bred young lady needed to know. But what she really loved was books. She read everything she could get her hands on, novels, poetry, even old newspapers. She would tell me the stories she had read, the characters, the plots. Her eyes would sparkle when she talked about books. I, on the other hand, wasn't much of a reader. My life was the farm, horses, livestock, land. I woke up early, worked all day, and went to bed early. But I started paying attention to the things she said, asking more questions, wanting to understand her world, which was so different from mine. And she also took an interest in my life. She would ask about the farm, how the harvest worked, about the workers, about my plans for the future. It wasn't empty curiosity, it was genuine interest. She wanted to understand who I was. The weeks passed. October, November, December. Christmas arrived, and the families exchanged gifts. My mother had a huge basket made with homemade sweets, candied fruits, and bourbon. Grace's family sent back a hand-embroidered tablecloth from her mother. In January 1951, my father gave me permission to write letters to Grace, but with one condition. He and her mother would read everything before delivering it. No passionate declarations, no intimacy, just respectful conversation. I wrote the first letter on a Sunday night, after returning from the visit. I talked about the farm, about the rain that had fallen during the week, about the plans for the new season. I ended by saying that I had greatly enjoyed talking with her, and that I eagerly awaited the next Sunday. She replied 3 days later. Her handwriting was beautiful, neat, slanted to the right. She wrote about a book she was reading, about the heat in town, about how slowly time passed between one Sunday and another. The letters became a habit, 1 a week, sometimes 2. I kept them all in a wooden box under my bed. I would read and reread them before going to sleep. The months passed. We gradually got to know each other at the slow pace that was allowed. There was no rush, no haste. Everything was very measured, very controlled by the families. But even so, even with all that formality, something grew between us. For me, it was like an explosive passion. I longed to be alone with her. I was driven crazy by the distance the families imposed, with her mother always there in the middle, watching every word, every glance. I wanted to take her hand and run away. I wanted to talk without a witness. I wanted to really get to know her, without supervision. I fantasized so many things with her that you don't even want to know. But whether I wanted to or not, fantasizing or not, I had no say in anything. I was just a puppet, manipulated by my father, and especially by my mother. So I waited, counted the days between one Sunday and the next, and treasured every smile from her like someone guarding a treasure. In mid-1951, almost a year after the first dinner, our mothers began to speak openly about marriage. My mother asked if I was sure. I said yes. She asked if I thought Grace would be a good wife, a good mother, a good homemaker. I said yes again. She was satisfied. On Grace's side, The same conversation happened. Her mother wanted to know if her daughter was happy with the choice, if I was a good man, hard-working, if I would treat her right. Grace said yes. It was around this time that my father and Dr. Richard sat down to talk about the dowry, about where we would live, about the practical arrangements of the wedding. It was decided that we would live on the farm, in the old Kentucky homestead itself, with my parents. It was customary at the time. The daughter-in-law lived with her husband's family, helped her mother-in-law with household chores, and learned to manage everything for when it was her turn to take over. Grace accepted without complaint. At the end of 1951, my father called me into his office, opened a drawer, and took out a small dark blue velvet box. Inside was a gold ring with a small stone, a diamond that had belonged to my grandmother. He told me it was for me to give to Grace with the official marriage proposal. The proposal happened on a Sunday in December, just before Christmas. I went to her house as always, but this time my father came along. The two fathers sat in the main living room. Grace and I stayed in the sitting room with her mother present. I knelt on the floor in front of the armchair where she was sitting. I took the box out of my pocket and opened it. The ring sparkled in the light coming through the window. I asked her to marry me. I used the right words, the ones my father had taught me the night before. I said I would be honored if she accepted to be my wife, that I would take care of her, respect her, and give her a dignified life. She looked at the ring, then at me. Her eyes were shining, moist. She said, "Yes." She said it softly, almost a whisper, but it was the loudest yes I had ever heard. I placed the ring on her finger. Her mother cried. My father and Dr. Richard came from the other room, shook my hand, and hugged Grace. It was decided. We were getting married. The wedding was set for May 1952, 5 months to prepare everything. My mother and Grace's mother took full charge. They decided everything: the church, the pastor, the flowers, the dress, the invitations, the lunch menu. Grace and I just signed where they told us to sign. The months of preparation flew by. The old Kentucky homestead underwent a renovation. They painted the walls, replaced curtains, and bought new furniture for the room that would be ours. My mother insisted that everything be perfect to welcome her daughter-in-law. Finally, the day arrived, the 10th of May, 1952. It dawned with a blue sky, strong sun, scorching heat. The first community church was packed. It seemed like the entire town came to see the wedding. The important families occupied the front pews. The farmhands from the farm sat in the back, dressed in their good clothes, hair combed, happy to participate. I stood at the altar, waiting in my black suit, tie, polished shoes. My heart beat irregularly. My hands were sweating. Then the music started. The wedding march played on the church's old organ. Everyone stood up. I turned around and saw her. Grace was walking down the center aisle, arm in arm with her father. Her dress was white, long, with lace at the hem and on the sleeves. The veil covered her face, but I could see her smile underneath. She came slowly, step by step, her eyes fixed on me. When she reached the altar, Dr. Richard placed her hand in mine. Her hand was small, warm, trembling slightly. The pastor began the ceremony, speaking of commitment, fidelity, and eternal love. He asked if I accepted Grace as my wife. I said yes, loud and firm. He asked if she accepted me as her husband. She said yes, in her soft voice. We exchanged rings, simple gold, without stones. The pastor blessed us, made the sign of the cross, and then said the phrase I had been waiting to hear since that night, under the magnolia tree. "You may kiss the bride." I lifted her veil slowly. Her brown eyes looked at me with a mix of joy and nervousness. I leaned down and touched my lips to hers. It was quick, respectful, but it was our first kiss. The church erupted in applause. We walked out hand in hand down the aisle. Outside the church, the guests threw rice. The children ran around shouting. The sun beat down strongly on my head. We got into the car decorated with flowers. Someone had tied old cans to the back bumper. They made noise the whole trip to the farm. Lunch was served under a huge tent set up in the farmyard. They had killed 3 hogs, 50 chickens, and made mountains of food. There was a long table for the important families and smaller tables for the farmhands and workers. Everyone ate until they couldn't anymore. There was music, dancing, and toasts with wine and whiskey. My father gave an emotional speech, a rare thing for him. Dr. Richard also spoke, wishing us happiness. Grace cut the three-tiered cake her mother had ordered. The party lasted until sunset. When it got dark, the guests started to leave. The farmhands went back to their cabins. The important families got into their cars and went to town. And then it was just us, she and I, husband and wife. We went up to the room they had prepared for us. It was large, with a new double bed, an embroidered white quilt, and waxed wooden furniture. There was a vase with fresh flowers on the dresser. Grace stood in the middle of the room, still in her wedding dress, looking around. I could tell she was nervous. I was too. That night, my dear, our life together truly began. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like the romantic books she read. It was awkward, shy, full of uncertainty, but it was ours. And when I woke up the next morning, with the sun coming through the window and Grace sleeping beside me, her hair spread on the pillow, her hand resting on my chest, I knew I had made the right choice. That woman would be my companion for the rest of my life. The first few months of marriage were a learning experience. Grace arrived at the farm as a daughter-in-law, not as the mistress. My mother still managed everything: the kitchen, the staff, the schedules, what was planted in the garden. Grace had to learn the ways of the house, my mother's quirks, the routine that had been established for decades. It wasn't easy for her. I noticed it in small things, in the way she hesitated before giving an order to a housekeeper, in how she asked my mother's permission before moving anything, in the tension in the air when the two of them were in the same kitchen. But Grace was smart. She quickly learned that the secret was not to confront. She observed, asked questions, pretended she was learning even when she already knew. She praised my mother's recipes, asked for advice on how to manage the house, and treated her with the respect of a daughter. Gradually, my mother softened. She began to trust her, to delegate small tasks, to teach her family secrets, like how to make the pumpkin pie the way my father liked it, which housekeeper was trustworthy and which needed supervision, how to deal with the farmhands without losing authority. I saw all this from a distance, because my day was in the fields. I woke before sunrise, had a quick breakfast, went out to the horse pastures, and only came back at the end of the afternoon, covered in dirt, tired. Grace would be waiting for me with hot water for my bath, clean clothes set aside. She would draw my bath, and we took advantage of the moments after I was clean to have some private time. We would all have dinner together. I, she, my parents. Then we'd go up to our room. It was in our room, away from the family's eyes, that we finally had time alone. There was no more shame, no more ceremony. Grace slowly lost that shyness of a newlywed. I lost my fear of hurting her, of doing something wrong. We got to know each other intimately, without haste, and she started doing some wild things that drove me crazy. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, she went down to the backyard in just her nightgown. I followed, of course. I found her near the fountain, laughing softly, her bare feet on the dew-wet grass. The full moon illuminated her completely. She pulled me behind the magnolia tree, the same one where we had first talked. We made love right there, standing, leaning against the trunk, biting each other's mouths to avoid making noise, terrified someone would wake up and catch us. After that, it became a habit. We'd invent excuses to be alone. I'd say I was going to check the water pump. She'd say she was going to get eggs from the chicken coop, and we'd meet halfway. We made love in the horse pastures more times than I can count. I'd spread my shirt on the ground between the horses' grazing spots. She'd lie on it, and we'd lose ourselves there, surrounded by the smell of earth and ripe hay. Once, we did it inside the hayloft on a pile of hay bales, another time in the barn. She would provoke me, look at me a certain way during lunch that I knew. Afterward, she'd lead me to some secluded spot. We loved each other very much. It wasn't just physical, no. It was everything. It was conversation, it was laughter, it was complicity. But the physical was important too. We never tired of each other. Even living under the watchful eye of the family, James and Grace found a way to keep that fire alive. Their passion was a secret world, just for them. But as we all know, secrets and passion are often the prelude to life's biggest, and sometimes most painful, changes. And then, in January 1953, Grace called me into the room one afternoon. She had a different smile on her face, a little nervous, a little happy. She told me she was expecting, pregnant. Our first child was coming. My heart raced in my chest. I was going to be a father, a father. I couldn't believe it. I hugged her, squeezed her tight, felt her small body in my arms, and thought, I have a life growing inside there. My mother was radiant with the news. My father gave me a pat on the back, a rare thing from him, and said I was becoming a real man. The following months were for preparation. They renovated a room to turn into a nursery. They bought a crib, baby clothes, cloth diapers. Grace slowly swelled, her belly growing, her breasts getting larger, her face gaining a glow it hadn't had before. She became more beautiful pregnant, I swear to God. It was as if she was illuminated from within. At the end of 53, one strong rainy dawn, the labor pains began. The midwife was called in a hurry. My mother took charge. They sent me away. They said men didn't enter during childbirth. I stayed in the hallway, listening to Grace's screams inside, feeling each scream like a knife entering my chest. It lasted for hours. It seemed like it would never end until I heard a faint, high-pitched cry of a newborn. The midwife opened the door, smiling. She said it was a boy, healthy, strong, crying right away. Grace was fine, tired, but fine. They let me in. Grace was lying in bed, pale, sweaty, with the baby wrapped in a swaddling cloth in her arms. The baby was red, small. I was impressed. I had never seen a baby up close. We named him Robert in honor of my father. 2 years later, the second came, a girl, a quicker, less painful delivery. We named her Olivia in honor of our grandmothers. And the following year, the third came, another girl. Grace hadn't even fully recovered from the previous pregnancy, but the girl came strong, determined, crying loudly from her first breath. We named her Isabella. Grace chose it. She said she had read it in a book and thought it was beautiful. I accepted. Isabella was different from the others from a very young age, quieter. She would spend hours looking at her own hands, at toys, at people. She observed everything with those large, dark eyes. She didn't cry much and didn't complain. It was as if she had been born knowing that the world demanded silence. In 1958, the fourth child came, another boy, Daniel, a difficult, long delivery. Grace suffered quite a bit, but the boy was born well. And in 1961, when I thought it was over, when Grace was already 31 and tired of giving birth, the fifth came, the youngest, Liam. I don't know if I've told you already, but Grace was a year older than me. 5 children in 8 years. The house was always full, baby cries, children's tantrums, running, mess. Grace barely had time to breathe. She spent the day taking care of the little ones, nursing one, changing another's diaper, calming a third's tantrum. My mother helped, but the responsibility was hers. I continued in the fields, working from sunup to sundown to support that family that had grown so much. 5 mouths to feed, 5 bodies to clothe, 5 futures to secure. But it was good to come home at the end of the day and see all that commotion. Michael, already 8 years old, serious like a little man, Olivia helping her mother with the younger siblings, Isabella sitting in the corner drawing on the floor with a stick, Daniel running after the chickens in the yard, and Liam, still tiny, crawling around the house. Sundays were sacred. After church, we would all have lunch together. The large dining room table would be full. My father at one end, me at the other, my mother on one side, Grace on the other, and the 5 of them spread out in the middle, eating, talking, fighting over silly things. Those were good times, times we don't appreciate at the moment, but that we sorely miss when they're over. Grace was always tired back then. 5 small children, a big house to care for, a mother-in-law to please. She grew thinner, her face became finer, her dark circles deeper, but she never complained, never said it was too much. She just did what needed to be done. At night, when she finally went up to our room, she would collapse onto the bed. I would lie beside her, pull her to my chest. Sometimes we would talk softly. Sometimes we would just lie there in silence, listening to each other's breathing. The nights of passion had ended. It only happened perhaps once a week, and even that was rare. But I understood and didn't press the issue. It was difficult to have intimacy with 5 small children. There was always one sleeping in the room with us because of a nightmare. There was always another one who woke up crying at the wrong time. There was always the sound of children in the hallway. So, we waited for the perfect moment that never came. And when it did, Grace was too exhausted, and I didn't have the courage to insist. It was on one of those nights in 1966 that she told me something I never forgot. She was lying on her back, looking at the ceiling. I was on my side, looking at her. She turned her head, looked at me, her eyes shining in the dark. She told me she was happy, that everything she had gone through, pregnancy after pregnancy, the tiredness, the responsibility was worth it, because she had built a family, a real family, full of love, full of life. I held her hand, squeezed her thin fingers in mine. I said I was happy too, that I couldn't imagine life without her. She smiled, that calm, tranquil smile that was uniquely hers. It was October 1966. Less than a year later, everything would change. But that night, we knew nothing. We only knew that we had 5 children sleeping in the next rooms, that the farm was producing well, that the family was united, that life, despite the exhaustion, was good. That was all we needed to know. The 12th of October, 1967, Thursday. I woke up early, as always, before the sun rose. Grace was still sleeping beside me, turned on her side, her hair spread on the pillow. I got up carefully not to wake her. I went downstairs, had a quick breakfast, toast with butter, strong black coffee. My mother was already in the kitchen giving orders to the housekeepers. Grace came down a little later, already dressed, in a flowered dress, her hair tied up, a purse slung over her shoulder. She told me she was taking Isabella to town. The stores were having a big autumn sale, and she needed to buy presents for the children. She would also take the opportunity to buy that watercolor set Isabella had been asking for months. I kissed her. I told her to be careful. She smiled, said she'd be back before lunch. Isabella appeared soon after, excited. 11 years old, thin, with big eyes shining with anticipation. She was happy to go with just her mother, without her siblings. They left in the car around 8:30 a.m. I waved from the porch, watching the car disappear around the bend in the dirt road. I went out to the fields as soon as it got light. It was tobacco cutting season. The farmhands were already spread out among the rows, knives in hand, working their way down the stalks. The sun rose slowly, warming up. It was going to be a hot day. I stayed in the fields all morning, supervising, checking, solving problems. One farmhand had argued with another over a boundary line. Another had cut his hand with a scythe. I needed to resolve all of that. It was my job. Around 11:30 a.m., I saw Michael running through the pastures from a distance. My eldest son, already 14 years old, is almost a man. He came panting, his face red from running so much, his arms flailing wildly. I stopped what I was doing. My heart tightened for no reason. That kind of rushing wasn't normal. He stopped in front of me, bending over, trying to catch his breath. The words came out choppy, rushed. "Dad, hospital," they called. "Mom, Isabella, accident, bus." Those broken words are the sound of a life shattering. That run to the hospital is a race against a truth that James isn't ready to face. What he finds there will change not only his life, but his daughter's, forever. My legs felt weak. I held him by the shoulders. I tried to understand. Accident? A bus? Are they okay? He didn't know. He just knew that someone from the hospital had called, asking me to come running, that something serious had happened. I dropped everything right there. I yelled for Mr. Frank, the foreman, to take over. I ran to the car. Michael came with me. I got in and started the engine with trembling hands. I drove too fast down the dirt road, the rocks clattering underneath the car, dust rising behind us. Michael beside me, pale, clutching the seat. He looked terrified, and I just kept repeating in my own head, "Please let it be something minor. Please let them be okay. Please, God, please." I reached town in 20 minutes. I left the car haphazardly, crooked, in front of the town hospital. Michael got out with me, running behind. We entered through the front door. The smell of alcohol and medicine hit us. People in the hallway, hurried nurses passing with trays, a young doctor with a blood-stained lab coat. I went straight to the counter, banged on the wood, and yelled, "Grace Sullivan and her daughter, Isabella. I'm her husband, her father, a bus accident. Where are they? How are they?" The girl at the counter turned pale, looked away, and said she would call a doctor. I waited. Each second felt like an hour. Michael stood beside me, breathing rapidly, his eyes wide. Then Dr. Miller appeared, an old doctor, white hair, hunched back. I had known him since childhood. He was a colleague of my father-in-law, a family friend for decades. He came toward me slowly. His face was solemn. He held my shoulder with a trembling hand. His voice came out low, tired, broken. "Jim, I'm so sorry, my son. We did everything we could, but she didn't make it." The words entered my ears but made no sense. I kept looking at him, waiting for him to tell me who he was talking about. Who didn't make it? He shook his head slowly. "Your wife. She passed away at the scene of the accident. Your daughter is okay." Michael beside me let out a scream, a high-pitched, animalistic cry that cut through the entire hallway. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees on the floor, began to weep, sobbing loudly, his whole body shaking. I couldn't move. I stood there, looking at Dr. Miller, trying to process what he had said. My wife dead, Grace dead. No, it can't be. She left home this morning. I kissed her. She said she'd be back for lunch. She can't be dead. Dr. Miller held my arm, led me to a chair, made me sit down, and sat beside me. Michael was still on the floor, crying, screaming, calling for his mother. He told me, in a slow, careful voice, like someone telling a terrible story to a child. It had happened around 10:30 a.m., downtown, in front of the toy store. It was a weekday, Thursday, but traffic was heavy because of the big sales event. Grace and Isabella had just left the store, carrying bags, and were about to cross the street to get back to their car, which was parked on the other side. They started to cross, Grace in front, Isabella beside her, holding hands. That's when the bus appeared. The main street line was coming down the hill from Town Square at high speed. The driver had lost his brakes. He honked desperately, shouted out the window, but the bus wouldn't stop. It was out of control, getting faster and faster. Grace saw it. She was in the middle of the street when she saw it. In a reflex, in a tenth of a second, she did the only thing she could do. She pushed Isabella with all her might to the other side of the street. The girl flew, landing on her knees on the curb. Then the bus hit Grace full on. Dr. Miller stopped talking, took a deep breath, looked at his own hands, and continued. The impact was brutal. Her body was thrown forward, dragged for several yards. And her right leg? He stopped again, ran a hand over his face. Her right leg, separated from her body. It was torn off at the knee. It flew, landing on the sidewalk several yards away. I know, honey. It's a horrible thing to hear, and even more horrible to tell, but it was the truth. And my girl, Isabella, she saw it. My God, she saw it all. The pain didn't start at the hospital. It started right there on that sidewalk. I felt bile rise in my throat. I covered my mouth. I took a deep breath, trying not to vomit right there. Michael heard it, screamed again, a tearing cry, and began to sob even louder, choking. Dr. Miller continued. He said that when the ambulance arrived, 20 minutes later, Grace had already passed away. Blood loss, head trauma. She didn't have a chance. She died quickly, he said, trying to console me. She didn't suffer much. But I couldn't think about that. I could only think about Isabella. My one-year-old daughter had seen all of that. She had seen her mother get hit, seen her body dragged, seen her leg torn off, flying, landing near her. I asked in a hoarse voice, "And Isabella, where is she?" "Doctor," Miller said, "she only has scrapes on her hands and knees. Nothing serious, but—" He hesitated. "But what?" He said the girl wasn't well, that she was in shock, that witnesses said she had screamed once, calling for her mother, and then had gone silent, completely silent. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She didn't react. I stood up. "I need to see her. Where is she?" He led me down the hall. Michael got up too, stumbling, his face swollen and red from crying so much. He followed behind us, tripping, sobbing. We passed a room. Dr. Miller stopped. He said that before seeing Isabella, I needed to see Grace, to identify the body. He opened the door. Inside was a gurney, a body covered by a white sheet, heavily stained with blood. He approached, held the corner of the sheet, and looked at me. I nodded. He pulled back the sheet. It was her. Her face pale like wax, her eyes closed, her brown hair matted with dried blood, stuck to her forehead, her mouth slightly open, her neck bruised. Her body was covered up to her chest, but you could see You could see that under the sheet something was missing. The right side from the waist down was sunken, empty. I felt my legs give out. I grabbed the edge of the gurney. I took a deep breath. I tried not to faint. Michael entered behind me. He saw his mother and let out another scream. He wanted to throw himself on her, but I held him. I hugged him tight. I turned his face to my chest so he wouldn't see anymore. He cried, screamed, struggled, almost fainted in my arms. I looked at Grace's face again. I touched her hand. It was cold, stiff. It wasn't her anymore. It was just a body. She was gone. I stayed there, I don't know how long, holding her cold hand with one hand, holding Michael, who was crying desperately with the other, until Dr. Miller touched my shoulder and said softly, "Jim, Isabella, you need to see her." I let go of Grace's hand. I left that room, dragging Michael, who could barely walk. We went to the hallway, and there I saw my daughter sitting on a wooden bench against the wall, alone, her hands bandaged, her little dress dirty with dirt and blood, her mother's blood, her eyes fixed on the wall ahead, empty, completely empty. She wasn't crying. She wasn't moving. She looked like a doll. Michael saw his sister, let go of me, ran to her, knelt in front of her, held her arms carefully so as not to hurt her bandaged hands. "Isabella, Isabella, are you okay? Talk to me." She didn't react, continued looking at the wall, as if her brother wasn't there. He shook her gently. "Isabella, please, say something." "Nothing." I approached, sat on the bench beside her. Michael remained kneeling, holding his sister's hands, quietly crying. I called her name softly, "Isabella." She didn't move. I placed my hand on her shoulder. She was trembling, trembling so much that her teeth chattered. "Isabella, my daughter, look at your father." Slowly, very slowly, she turned her face, looked at me, and what I saw in those eyes broke me in half. There was nothing there, no emotion, no life. It was like looking into emptiness. I tried to hug her. Her body went stiff, rigid. She didn't return the hug, just stayed there, letting me hug her. I spoke in her ear, said that everything was going to be okay, that her father was there, that I would take care of her, that she would be fine. She didn't answer. I let go of her. I looked into her eyes again. "Isabella, can you talk to your father? Can you say something?" She opened her mouth. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She tried again. Her mouth opened, her throat constricted, but nothing. Her eyes filled with water. The first tear ran down, then another and another, but she made no sound. She cried in absolute silence. The trauma was so profound, it literally stole her voice. Those silent tears are the sound of a soul locked away. This is the moment James realizes he hasn't just lost his wife, he's also lost a part of his daughter. Dr. Miller approached, called me aside. I left Isabella with Michael. He took me a little further away. He told me that there were 3 witnesses who saw everything. He asked if I wanted to talk to them. I said yes. He went to get them. He returned with 3 people, an old man, the owner of the corner bakery, and 2 middle-aged ladies who were waiting for the bus at the stop. They recounted details I didn't want to hear but needed to know. The bakery owner said he was at the door when he heard the sound of the bus coming at high speed, the horn blowing non-stop. He looked and saw the 2 of them in the middle of the street. He saw when Grace pushed the girl, saw the bus hit her. He said he would never forget the sound of the body hitting metal, the sound of bones breaking. One of the ladies said she saw the leg. She said the leg flew through the air. It spun, landed on the sidewalk about 10 yards away. It landed near Isabella. The girl looked, saw, recognized it. It was her own mother's leg, with the shoe still on her foot. The other lady, said Isabella, let out a scream she had never heard before, a scream of deep pain, of a torn soul. She screamed, "Mom," just once, loud, desperate, and then went silent. She sat there on the sidewalk and just looked at her mother's leg on the ground. She didn't cry. She didn't scream anymore. She just looked. She stayed like that until the ambulance arrived, until they took her from there, carried her to the hospital. And even here at the hospital, she hadn't said anything else. I heard all that and felt the world collapse. My 1-year-old daughter had seen her mother die brutally, and now she couldn't speak anymore. I thanked the witnesses. They left. Dr. Miller stayed. I asked if he thought she would speak again. He said he didn't know, that it was traumatic shock, that in such cases, sometimes people recovered in days, sometimes in weeks, sometimes never. Never, the word echoed in my head. I went back to the hallway. Isabella was still on the bench. Michael was sitting beside her now, holding her hand, quietly crying. I sat on her other side. The three of us stayed there in silence. That's when I heard the noise. Hurried footsteps in the hallway, loud voices, and then he appeared. Doctor Richard, my father-in-law, Grace's father, running, stumbling, his suit crumpled, his hair disheveled, his glasses crooked on his face. His wife, Susan, came behind, holding onto the wall to keep from falling. He saw me, stopped, his eyes wide, red, desperate. Jim, tell me it's not true. Tell me my daughter isn't dead. I stood up. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. No. He let out a scream, a cry of pain that tore through the entire hospital. He fell to his knees right there on the cold floor of the hallway. He pounded his fists on the floor, screaming again. My daughter, my little girl. No, it can't be. Susan also collapsed. She sat in a chair, hugged Michael from behind, crying and screaming with him. Doctor Miller came running, tried to calm them, said they needed to be quiet, that there were other people in the hospital. But Dr. Richard didn't listen. He just cried, just screamed, begged to see his daughter, implored. I knelt beside him, held his shoulder. He looked at me, his eyes full of tears, of despair. How was it? How did it happen? Did she suffer? I told him in a broken voice. The bus, the brakes, Grace pushing Isabella, the impact. He listened through his tears, covered his face with his hands. My girl, my only daughter, she's gone. She left me. Susan dragged herself to the bench where Isabella was. She looked at her granddaughter, saw her condition, her empty eyes, her closed mouth, her bandaged hands. Isabella, my sweet granddaughter. Isabella didn't react. Susan tried to hug her. Isabella went stiff, rigid. Her grandmother began to cry even more. What have they done to you, my child? What did you see? Dr. Richard stood up, staggering, asked to see his daughter's body. Dr. Miller hesitated, said it might be better if he didn't see that the body was very bruised, but he insisted, screamed, demanded, so they took him. Susan went with him. I stayed with the children. I heard the screams coming from the room. Dr. Richard, seeing his dead daughter, seeing what was left of her, screaming, yelling, breaking down, until he fell silent. A silence worse than the screams. They returned to the hallway minutes later. Dr. Richard seemed to have aged 10 years. He walked hunched, slowly, as if every step hurt. Susan held on to him, crying softly. He came to me, hugged me, cried on my shoulder. He said he was so sorry that I had lost my wife, that the grandchildren had lost their mother. I hugged him back. I said I was sorry for his loss, that he had lost his daughter. I was a father too. I tried to put myself in his shoes, and the pain became infinitely greater. Then I had to take care of things, documents, paperwork, decisions about the body, about the burial. I spent the rest of the day at the hospital signing papers, talking to people, handling everything on autopilot, because my head wasn't working right. My father arrived later. My mother didn't come. She stayed to take care of the other children at home. My father cried too, said he considered her the daughter he never had. Later, when we arrived, the sun had already set. The house was lit up. Everyone already knew. I entered holding Isabella's hand. She walked beside me, silent, empty. The other children were in the living room. Olivia, 12 years old, cried, clinging to her grandmother. Daniel, 9 years old, sat on the floor, looking into space. Liam, 6 years old, in the lap of a housekeeper, confused, asking where his mother was. My mother came to me, hugged me tight. She said something about God's will, about being strong, about the children needing me. I nodded. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Night fell. They gave the children dinner. No one ate properly. Afterward, they sent everyone to bed. I went up to our room. I turned on the light. Everything was the same. The bed she had made that morning, the dress she had taken off yesterday, hanging on the chair, her perfume on the dresser, her slippers beside the bed, the book she was reading on the nightstand. But she wasn't there, and she never would be again. I sat on the edge of the bed, picked up her pillow. It still smelled of her. Soap, jasmine. That's when I broke down. I cried like I had never cried in my life. I cried, clutching that pillow, pounding the mattress, screaming at God. Why? Why her? Why did you take her and leave me? Why did you make my daughter see that? I cried until my throat hurt, until my chest burned, until I had no strength left. This is the moment the dam breaks. Alone in their room, surrounded by her memory, the true weight of forever finally hits him. It's a grief so total, it threatens to swallow him whole. When I stopped, the room was dark. I had turned off the light without realizing it. I lay there, clutching her pillow, and that's when I heard a noise at the door. I looked. It was Isabella, in a white nightgown, barefoot, her little hair damp, standing there looking at me. I don't know how long she had been there, but when our eyes met, I saw tears streaming down her face. She cried soundlessly, just tears. I got up, went to her, opened my arms, and for the first time, she came. She hugged me tight, buried her face in my neck, and cried. She cried silently, but she cried. I held her, squeezed her tight, told her we would be okay, that I would take care of her, that we would get through this. She didn't respond, but she tightened her hug. We stayed like that until she was tired, until her body relaxed. I picked her up, carried her to her room, laid her in bed, covered her, sat beside her. She looked at me, her eyes red, swollen, but no longer empty. There was pain there, deep sadness. Then I went back to my room, lay down in my clothes, and thought, tomorrow is the funeral. Tomorrow I'll have to put my wife in the ground. The wake was the next day, Friday, October 13. I woke up without having slept well. I went downstairs as the sun was rising. The house was already in motion. My mother commanding the housekeepers, tidying the main living room, draping the mirrors with black cloth, as was customary, preparing food for the visitors who would come. The children were all awake. None had slept well either. Michael, his eyes even more swollen, red from crying so much the night before. Olivia helping her grandmother, trying to keep busy to avoid thinking. Daniel and Liam were quiet, sitting in the kitchen, startled by all the commotion, and Isabella sat in the corner of the living room, in the black dress they had found for her, her hands still bandaged, her feet swinging without touching the floor, her eyes fixed on nothingness. She hadn't said a word since the hospital, not to eat, not to sleep. She simply didn't speak. I tried to give her breakfast, put the plate in front of her, toast with butter. She didn't touch it. I picked up the toast, brought it to her mouth, said softly, "Eat, my daughter. You need to eat." She turned her face. I insisted, "Isabella, please, just one bite." She shook her head. "No, at least that. At least," she reacted. She still understood. She just didn't speak. The coffin arrived around 9 a.m. They brought it in a wagon decorated with white flowers. 4 men carried it inside. They placed it in the main living room on velvet-covered sawhorses. They opened the lid. Inside was Grace. They had prepared her. My mother had chosen a white, lace dress, like a nightgown, for the burial. Her hair was loose, her face made up to hide the pallor of death. Her hands crossed over her chest, holding a white rosary. They had placed flowers around her, white lilies, white roses. The sweet smell was sickening, but under the dress I knew. Her right leg was missing. They had filled it with hundreds of those flowers, and every time I looked, I could only think. My daughter saw that leg torn off. The visitors started arriving soon after. First, the closest relatives, my father's brothers, already old, Grace's cousins coming from neighboring towns, then the neighbors, the farmhands from the farm, the church pastor, the town's merchants. It seemed everyone knew Grace. Everyone had a story to tell, that she was kind, that she helped the poor, that she had a gentle smile, that she was a good mother. I stood there beside the coffin, shaking hands, nodding, thanking them for their words, but I wasn't processing anything. It was as if I had left my body and was watching everything from a distance. Dr. Richard and Susan arrived around 10 a.m. They were dressed in black, he in a dark suit, she in a long dress with a veil. Both their faces were swollen, their eyes red. They had cried all night too. Dr. Richard went straight to the coffin, stood there looking at his dead daughter. He cried, said she looked beautiful. Susan came to me, hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "Jim, take care of my granddaughter. Isabella will need you very much." I said I would take care of her, that I wouldn't leave her alone. Night fell. They lit candles around the coffin. They began to pray the rosary. The pastor led, everyone responding in unison. "Hail Mary, full of grace, pray for us sinners." I prayed mechanically, the words coming out without thought, without feeling. Around 11 p.m., most of the visitors left. Only the closest relatives and a few intimate friends remained. They would spend the night at the wake, as was customary. I went to Isabella. She remained in the same spot, sitting, silent, her eyes half closed from exhaustion, but not sleeping. When the sun began to rise, it was already Saturday, the day of the burial. People started arriving again, more people. The church would be packed. Around 8 a.m., they closed the coffin, nailed the lid shut. Each hammer blow was a stab in my chest, because I knew I would never see her face again. That was the last time. They carried the coffin to the wagon, covered it with flowers, and pulled it to the First Community Church. The procession was long. It seemed like the entire town followed. We walked slowly down the dirt road, up the hill. The sun was already hot, sweat running down, but no one complained. The service was long. The pastor spoke of eternal life, of the kingdom of heaven, of God's mercy. He said that Grace was a good woman, a dedicated mother, a faithful wife, that God had called her because he needed another angel. I couldn't hear clearly. I just looked at the closed coffin at the front, covered with white flowers, and thought, my wife is in there, and soon they will bury her, and I will be left here alone with 5 children to raise. When the service ended, they carried the coffin again, taking it to the cemetery. The procession continued, up the street, passing through downtown, past houses, past shops, until the iron gate of the cemetery. The grave was already open, deep, with red earth piled beside it, the grave digger waiting with a shovel in his hand. They placed the coffin on the edge, passed the ropes underneath. 4 men held the ends. The pastor said the last prayer, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and they began to lower it, the ropes creaking, the coffin swaying, slowly descending, until it disappeared into the darkness of the grave. The hollow sound when it hit the bottom. Finally, the pastor threw the first handful of dirt. It fell onto the lid, a dry sound. Then it was my turn. I took a handful of red dirt and threw it. It fell, covering a small part of the flowers. The children came, one by one. Michael threw his, quietly crying. Olivia threw hers, sobbing. Daniel threw his, trembling. Liam didn't want to. He was scared. He said he wouldn't throw dirt on his mother. I left him and Isabella. I placed a white rose in her hand. The last rose, I said softly, "Throw it for your mother, my daughter. Say goodbye to her." She looked at the rose, then at the grave, and stood there motionless. Everyone waited. The cemetery was silent, only the wind in the trees. She slowly opened her hand. The rose fell, swirled in the air, and landed on top of the coffin down below. Then she took a step back, turned her back. I held her before she could leave, hugged her from behind. I felt her body stiff, trembling. I whispered, "I know it hurts, my daughter. I feel it too. But we'll get through this together. I promise." She didn't answer, but she leaned her head on my chest. She stayed there. The gravedigger started shoveling dirt, shovel after shovel, covering the coffin, covering the flowers, covering everything. When he finished, the grave was full, level. They piled the wreaths of flowers on top. They placed a simple wooden cross with a metal plaque. Grace Evans Sullivan, 1930 to 1967, beloved wife and mother. 37 years old, only 37 years of life, still a healthy young woman. How could this happen? 15 years of marriage, 5 children, and it was over. The first few weeks after the burial were the hardest. The house was too quiet, a heavy silence that hurt. My mother took charge of the children. She took care of everything, doing her best, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't Grace. I went back to work the following week, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The farm didn't stop. The hay didn't harvest itself. The farmhands needed supervision. Life, no matter how much it hurt, continued. Isabella, still silent, didn't say a word. She ate little, slept poorly, and spent her time sitting in her room drawing dark, meaningless scribbles, as if trying to put on paper what she couldn't express in words. I took her to the doctor, to Dr. Miller first. He examined her, said there was nothing wrong with her throat, nothing physical. It was trauma, psychological. He said it would pass with time, that I needed to be patient. But the weeks passed, and she didn't get better. Michael changed too. My 4-year-old son, who used to be cheerful and playful, became a man overnight. He took on responsibilities, helped his grandmother with his younger siblings, took Daniel and Liam to school, did chores around the house, trying to be strong. But I saw it. I saw the pain in his eyes, his longing for his mother. Olivia withdrew, became quiet, serious, spent hours locked in her room. When I asked if she was okay, she just said yes, but I knew she wasn't. Daniel started having nightmares. He'd wake up at night screaming, calling for his mother. I would go to his room, turn on the light, he would be all wet. He cried. He said he had dreamed his mother was alive, that it had all been a lie, and when he woke up and saw it wasn't, it hurt all over again. And Liam, tiny, only 6 years old, asked every day, "When is Mommy coming back? Where is she? Why did she leave?" At first, I tried to explain. I told him that his mother had gone to heaven, that she was with God, that she wasn't coming back, but he didn't understand, or didn't want to understand. One day, he asked if his mother didn't love him anymore, if that's why she had left. I broke down, knelt in front of him, held his small face with both hands. I said no, that his mother loved him more than anything, that she didn't choose to leave, that it was an accident, that she wanted to stay. He cried. I cried too. We stayed there hugging, crying together. The months passed. October turned into November. November turned into December. Christmas arrived. It was the worst Christmas of my life. My mother tried to make it festive. She decorated the house, cooked food, bought presents for her grandchildren, but no one was in the mood to celebrate. We sat down for Christmas dinner, the table full of food, but Grace's place was empty. That empty chair hurt more than anything. I tried to pray before eating, to thank God for his blessings, but my voice failed. How could I give thanks? The woman I loved had died. My daughter no longer spoke. The family was shattered. My mother continued the prayer. Everyone made the sign of the cross. We began to eat in silence. That's when Isabella suddenly stood up, her chair scraping on the floor. Everyone stopped, looked at her. She stood there, looking at her mother's empty chair, her eyes full of tears. She tried to speak. Her mouth opened, moved, but nothing came out. She tried again, forced it. Her face turned red from the effort, her throat constricted. Nothing. She let out a scream, a silent, soundless scream, just air escaping. And then she ran. She ran to her room, slammed the door. That empty chair is louder than any noise. For Isabella, it's a symbol of everything she's lost and everything she can't say. The family is together, but they've never been further apart. I got up to follow. My mother held my arm, said softly, "Let her go. She needs to cry alone." But I couldn't bear it. I went upstairs, knocked on her bedroom door. "Isabella, open the door." "Silence," I insisted. "Please, my daughter, let me in." I heard the latch click open. I went in. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed, crying, her face wet, her shoulders shaking. I sat on the floor beside her, said nothing, just stayed there. I stayed until she went to sleep in bed. The year turned. 1968 arrived. I decided I needed to do something for Isabella. I couldn't leave her like that, silent, withdrawn, suffering alone. I took her to Lexington, the state capital. I sought out the best doctors, psychiatrists, neurologists, people who understood trauma. My father-in-law knew many people, many professionals. The first doctor ran a battery of tests, checked her reflexes, asked her to try to speak, and noted everything. In the end, he called me into his office. He said her case was psychogenic mutism, that she had the physical capacity to speak. Her vocal cords worked, but the trauma had blocked it. It was as if her brain had shut down her speech to protect itself. I asked if there was treatment, if there was a cure. He said there was therapy, hospitalization in a specialized clinic, a controlled environment, trained professionals. I asked how long. He said it depended. It could be months, it could be years. Years. I left there with the hospitalization referral in my hand, but when I looked at Isabella, scared, I knew I wouldn't do it. I wasn't going to lock my daughter in a hospital. I wasn't going to take her from home. She had already lost her mother. She wasn't going to lose her father and family too. I tore up the referral, threw it in the trash. We went back to the farm. Doctors are doctors, they know their business. But I'm a father. They saw a case. I saw my daughter. I knew, deep down, that locking her away, it wasn't a cure. It was just another way to lose her. I'd rather have been wrong than abandon her. I looked for other doctors, other treatments. One suggested hypnosis. I took her. We did 3 sessions. Isabella would go into a trance. The doctor would give commands. He asked her to speak. She tried, but nothing came out. Another suggested electroshock. He said it would reset her brain, that he had seen cases like hers improve. I refused immediately. I wasn't going to let anyone shock my daughter. In 1970, 3 years after the accident, I took her to a pastor who was said to work miracles. We traveled 2 days to reach the small rural town where he lived. The pastor prayed over her, placed his hand on her head, asked God to give her back her voice, made promises, blessed her. Isabella stayed there quietly, letting him. In the end, the pastor said it was God's will, that when God deemed it time, she would speak again. We returned home. She remained silent. The years passed. 1,971, 1,972, 1,973. Isabella grew up, became a young woman, still not speaking. I stopped looking for doctors, stopped trying treatments. I accepted it. My daughter was mute. Maybe it would be like that for the rest of her life. But I wouldn't leave her alone. I wouldn't give up on her. I hired a private tutor. She couldn't go to school. The other children teased her, called her the silent one. Weird. She would come home crying. So she studied at home, learned to read better, to write, to do sums, to communicate on paper. She drew a lot. She had piles of notebooks full of drawings, landscapes, faces, sometimes drawings of her mother the way she remembered her. And little by little, very slowly, she learned to live that way, silent but alive. The other children grew up too. Michael gradually took over the farm with me and my father. He became a strong, hard-working, serious man. By 18, he was already managing the farmhands better than many old foremen. He was my right-hand man. Olivia grew up beautiful. By 16, she already had suitors knocking on the door. My mother wanted to choose a groom for her, as she had done with me, but I didn't let her. I said the girl would choose on her own, whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted. My mother was furious. She said I was spoiling the girl, that a well-bred young lady doesn't choose a husband alone, that it was the parents' responsibility. I had a big fight with her. I said I wouldn't do to Olivia what they had done to me, which worked out in my case because I was lucky, but that my daughter would have a choice. Olivia chose a young man from town, a merchant's son, a hard-working, honest young man. He wasn't rich like us, but he was good. He treated her well. They married in 1973. I gave them my blessing, but the worst wasn't that. The worst was 2 years after Grace died. I was 38 years old, a widower, with 5 children to raise. My mother started bringing women home. At first, it was subtle. She would invite Mrs. So-and-so's daughter for lunch, Miss What's-her-name's niece for coffee, always dressed up, always smiling, always sitting near me at the table. I pretended not to notice, but I did, until one day she spoke openly, said I needed to remarry, that the children needed a mother, that I was still young, that I couldn't stay alone for the rest of my life. I looked at her and said calmly, "I won't marry again," she insisted. She said it was nonsense, that Grace wouldn't want to see me alone, that she herself had already chosen some candidates. Respectable young ladies, widows, good women. Can you believe it? I felt my blood boil. I stood up from my chair, slammed my hand on the table, and shouted. I said there wouldn't be any other woman, that Grace had died 2 years ago, that I still slept clutching her pillow, that I still missed her every day, that I wouldn't replace her as if she were a housekeeper who left and needed another hired. My mother turned pale, tried to speak. "I only want what's best for you. I want you to leave me alone." She fell silent, but I didn't stop. I said that if she brought another woman, I would leave. I would take my 5 children and disappear, and she would never see her grandchildren again. Her eyes widened. She said I was crazy, that I couldn't do that to her. "Yes, I can, and I will if you don't stop this." She started to cry. a rare thing. My mother wasn't one to cry. She said she only wanted to help me, that she couldn't stand to see me suffering, that she thought a new wife would bring joy back to the house. I sat down again, took a deep breath, and spoke more calmly. I said I understood, but that it wasn't her place to decide my life, that I lived there, worked there, but my life was my own to manage, my children were my own to care for, and my decisions were my own to make. She wiped her tears, apologized, begged me not to leave. She said she wouldn't interfere anymore, that she would respect my time. I accepted, but I made it clear. If she brought up the subject again, I wouldn't give her a second chance. She never touched on the subject again, and no other woman ever appeared in the house. I know I hurt my mother. She just wanted what was best, her way. But she didn't understand, or maybe I didn't. Replacing Grace, it was like trying to replace the sky. You just can't. Her silence after that, well, maybe that was a late understanding. The years passed. Daniel graduated from high school, went to medical school in Lexington, wanted to be a doctor. He said it was to help people like Isabella, people whom doctors had given up on. And Liam, who was too young when his mother died, grew up without really remembering her. He only knew her from photos, from stories we told. He grew up very attached to his grandmother, my mother. It happened that in 1975, my mother passed away. It was in the early morning. I woke up to Linda's scream, an old housekeeper. I ran to her room and found her lying in bed, motionless, her eyes closed, her face peaceful, as if she had fallen asleep and simply hadn't woken up. I called her name, shook her, nothing. I placed my hand on her neck. There was no pulse. Her body was already cooling. A sudden heart attack. That's what the doctor said later. Her heart stopped. She didn't even suffer. It was quick. But for me, it wasn't quick. For me, it was another blow. My mother was difficult. She was controlling. She was stubborn. We fought. We disagreed on almost everything. But she was my mother. She was the one who raised me. She was the one who held the house together after Grace died, who took care of my children when I couldn't get out of bed. And now, she was gone too. The wake was in the same room where we had the wake for Grace. The same room that 8 years earlier had received my wife, now received my mother. The children suffered greatly, especially Michael and Liam. They cried like children. Olivia came from town, pregnant with her first child, crying too. Daniel left medical school and rushed home. Isabella also cried. My mother had been patient with her, never gave up on her, and now she had left us. She was 72 years old. We buried her in the same cemetery as Grace. I chose a spot very close, in the same section, so they could keep each other company. Two strong women who had kept the family on its feet. My father, Colonel Robert Sullivan, was already 76 years old, hunched over, walking slowly with a cane. He had aged a lot after Grace died, and now, seeing his wife being buried, he seemed to have aged another 10 years in just one day. He stood at the edge of the grave, holding his cane with both hands, looking down, and then he cried. He broke down. He cried loudly, not caring who was watching. His shoulders shook. His cane trembled in his hands. I was sure he loved my mother very much. I always knew it. He always did everything she wanted. Absolutely everything. My mother ruled the house, the decisions, the children, and he let her. He pretended he was in charge, especially in front of visitors. But deep down, everyone knew. Patricia was in charge, and Colonel Robert obeyed. The other colonels in the region judged him for it. They said he had given his wife too much freedom, that he had lost control of the house, that a woman shouldn't be in charge or things would get messy. They made jokes behind his back. They said he secretly wore a skirt, but he didn't care. He kept letting her decide everything because he loved her, because he respected her, because he knew she was intelligent, capable, and made better decisions than many men. And now she was gone, and he cried like a child at the edge of the grave. I approached, held him by the shoulders. He turned and hugged me. He cried on my chest. His large body shook all over. He said between sobs, "She was everything to me, Jim. Everything. I don't know how to live without her. I don't know." I cried too. I hugged my father and cried with him, because I understood. I understood perfectly. I had lived 8 years without Grace, and I still didn't know how. They had lived for 53 years, more than half a century together, and now he was alone. After everyone left, he stayed alone in front of the grave. I left him there. I knew he needed to say goodbye in his own way. I came back half an hour later. He was still standing there, motionless. I approached, placed my hand on his shoulder. "Dad, let's go home." He didn't move. He just said in a hoarse voice that I almost didn't recognize, 53 years, Jim. 53 years with that woman, and now she's gone." I just held his arm, helped him walk to the car, took him home, and he would have to learn to live without his beloved Patricia. In the following months, my father collapsed. He stopped eating properly, stopped leaving his room. He was already retired from working on the farm. It was Michael and I who took care of everything. He spent the day sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, staring at the horizon, not saying anything. I tried to talk to him, tried to get him interested in the farm again, but he just shook his head. He said there was no point anymore, that he had worked his whole life to leave everything to his son, to his grandchildren. And now that he had succeeded, the only person who mattered was gone. 3 months after my mother's burial, he also passed away. It wasn't an illness, it wasn't an accident, it was simply giving up. They found him in the bathtub one June morning. The water was already cold, his body submerged, his eyes closed. The housekeeper who found him this time, Linda, screamed so loudly that she woke the entire house. I ran to the bathroom, saw my father there dead in the bathtub. He must have gone in during the night. I had checked on him earlier, and he seemed to be sleeping. They called the doctor. He examined him. He said his lungs were full of water, drowning, but he couldn't say if he had a cardiac arrest before sinking or if he had simply sunk and didn't want to get up. I never knew. I'll never know if my father died of a broken heart or if he chose to leave, if he sank and fought or if he sank and accepted. What I do know is that he no longer wanted to live. Can a man die of a broken heart? James believes so. He's now lost his mother's strength and his father's foundation. He is truly alone, left to carry the entire weight of the family. In the 3 months after my mother died, he had become a shadow. He didn't speak, he didn't eat, he didn't leave his room. It was as if he had already died. Only his body had yet to follow. And that June dawn, his body followed. Can a man die of a broken heart? I believe so. My father was a fortress, but my mother was the foundation of that fortress. When she went, he didn't want to stand anymore either. I never asked if it was an accident or a choice, honey, because I think I already knew the answer. I buried my father beside my mother, together again, as he wanted, and how I suffered then, my dear, how I suffered. That fortress that was my father, that man I always thought was indestructible, had crumbled, had given up, had left me. In less than a year, I had lost both, father and mother. They were gone. They left me alone to take care of everything. The dining table became emptier and emptier. Before, there were many of us. My father at one end, I at the other. My mother on one side, Grace on the other, the 5 children scattered in the middle, the house full of noise, of life. Now there were only me and the children who remained. Each meal was a reminder of what we had lost. Each silence was an echo of the voices that were no longer there, and I sat at the head of the table, trying to be strong for the children, but inside, I felt broken, the worst of all men. God forgive me for saying this, but it's at times like these that we realize money is nothing. I had land, I had a farm, I had horses producing, I had money in the bank, I had the old Kentucky homestead, staff, a car, everything a man could want. But I didn't have what mattered most, some of the people I loved most. What good was owning all that if I came home and it was practically empty? I knew poor men, farm hands from the farm, who lived in simple cabins with dirt floors. They had nothing, but they had their family, they had their wives, they had all their children together, they had health, they had joy. And I, with everything I had, felt like the poorest man in the world, because I had learned the hard way. We take nothing from here. You see, all that land, all those horses, all the money in the bank, they can't hold you when you cry. They can't fill an empty chair at the dinner table. In that moment, looking around that empty house, I understood the real wealth I had lost. Time passed. Michael, already 23 years old, had taken over most of the work. He was the one negotiating with buyers now, closing contracts, managing the farmhands. I still supervised, but less and less. I was tired of everything. But Michael worried me, not because of his work. In that, he was impeccable. He worried me because of the way he treated women. He was too much of a womanizer. He would be with the daughters of employees, of the farmhands' families, young girls, virgins, who fell in love easily with him. The boss's son, handsome, charming, would promise eternal love, marriage, a future together, take them to the woods, take their virginity, and then forget the promise. He would move on to another. I knew. Everyone knew, but he was a grown man. I couldn't control him. Until one day, in 1977, one of the employees knocked on our door, nervous, red with anger. He said his daughter was pregnant, that Michael was the father, that he would have to marry the girl, that it was a matter of honor. I called Michael, asked if it was true. He confirmed, without any shame. He said yes, that the girl was pregnant, that the child was his, but that he wouldn't marry her, that he would acknowledge the child, give money, take care of it, but didn't want the mother. I didn't know where to put my face. The employee exploded, screamed, said he would kill my son, that he would cause a scandal. I had to hold him, calm him down. I offered money, a lot of money. I said Michael would take full responsibility, pay for everything, give his name to the child, but that I wouldn't force him to marry. The man left, cursing and promising revenge. The girl had the baby, a boy, my first grandson from Michael. He registered him, gave him his surname, sent money every month, but never married the mother, never truly committed to her, and remained the same, changing women like he changed clothes. I tried to talk to him, told him it wasn't right, that he was hurting people, that he would end up alone. He just laughed, said he didn't want to marry, didn't want commitment, that he had seen what happened to me when I lost Grace, the suffering, the pain, and that he would never fall in love, would never give himself, because he didn't want to suffer. I understood then. My son had been traumatized by his mother's death too, in his own way. He had decided not to love anyone, so as not to risk losing, and I didn't know how to fix it. Grace's death didn't just kill her, it broke all of us, each in our own way. Michael, he chose to freeze his heart, thinking if he didn't love, he wouldn't hurt. It took him a long time to learn that a frozen heart sometimes hurts even more than a broken one. Olivia, on the other hand, never gave me trouble. She had 2 children. The girl was named Susan in honor of her mother, and the boy was Matthew. She lived in town. She came to visit on Sundays with her husband and children. The house came alive again on those days. The sound of children running, laughter, shouting. Look, if there's anything better than being a father, it's being a grandfather. But when they left, the silence returned. Daniel had graduated as a doctor, opened his practice in Lexington, called occasionally, came for end-of-year holidays, but his life was there now. He was a good young man, the most level-headed of my children, serious, studious, dedicated. He was dating another doctor, Jessica, a beautiful, intelligent black woman. She came from a humble family. Her father had been a hospital doorman, her mother a laundress, but the girl had studied on a scholarship, passed medical school, and graduated with honors. Daniel was so proud of her. Every time he came to visit, he brought her, introduced her to everyone, showed her off without any shame, talked about her story, how she had struggled, how she was a better doctor than many children of doctors he knew. Not that this was a cause for shame, but people are people, full of prejudice. I heard comments in town, at church, at parties, people whispering, saying Daniel could have chosen better, that there were white girls from good families interested in him, that he didn't need to bring a black woman home. I was furious when I heard that. I called the people to a conversation. I said that Jessica was a certified doctor, that she was worth more than many lazy white folks I knew, that if my son had chosen her, it was because she was a woman of value. Daniel thanked me, said he knew people would talk, but that he didn't care, that he loved Jessica, and that he would marry her, with or without blessings. I gave my blessing, of course, I did. The girl was good, hard-working, respectful. She treated my son well. The rest didn't matter. They married in 1978, a small, simple but beautiful ceremony. She was already pregnant, but I only found out later. Some people didn't go because of her race, but I did. I escorted the bride because her father had died the year before, which was why they had postponed the wedding. I walked her down the aisle, gave her to my son, and felt proud. Proud of him for choosing based on character, Not race, not family, but for who she was inside. And Liam was 18 years old, had finished high school. He didn't want to leave the farm. He liked the land. He liked working in the fields. He said he would stay, that he would take over part of the farm with Michael, that it was his life. He also didn't want to study. I was happy about that. In our line of work, you didn't need an education. It was only if you wanted to, just to say you had it. And Isabella, my Isabella, was already 22 years old, still mute, 11 years without speaking a word. She lived on the farm with me, Michael, and Liam. She helped with household chores, cooked, cleaned. She didn't have to, but she liked to feel useful. She drew a lot, notebooks and notebooks full of drawings, but she didn't speak. I had accepted it. She was like that, and it was okay. It was on a March afternoon, a hot day, the sun scorching the earth, when he appeared. I was on the porch, sitting in the rocking chair that had been my father's, drinking coffee and looking at the horse pastures in the distance. I saw a man coming down the dirt road on foot, carrying an old suitcase, simple clothes, a worn hat on his head. He walked slowly, tired, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He stopped at the farm gate. He looked at the house, hesitated. I stood up and went to the fence. "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" He took off his hat. He was young, about 30 years old, maybe less. Thin face, sunburnt, calloused hands. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you the owner of the farm?" "I am James Sullivan." "What do you need?" He swallowed hard. "I'm looking for work, sir. I heard this is a big farm. I thought maybe there was an opening for another worker." I looked at him. He didn't look like a loafer. He looked like an honest, hard-working man in need of an opportunity. "Where are you from?" "From Tennessee, sir. But my family lives nearby, too, in the next town." "Do you know it?" "I just came from there. A failure. I lost my land due to drought and debt. The bank took everything. I was trying to find work to help my family. I have 6 siblings, but each went to a different part of America looking for a better life. Only my mother and father stayed in town, and now even putting food on the table is hard. Big family. Yes, sir, all spread out in this big world of God's. I thought we always needed hands on the farm, and there was something about that man that inspired trust. Having family nearby changed everything. I knew he wasn't someone without roots or without a story, and for anything I just had to cross the road and find out if he was good people. "That's your name?" "Thomas, sir. Thomas Anderson." "All right, Thomas. I'll give you a chance. 2 weeks trial. If you work well, you stay. If not, you leave. Fair enough." His eyes sparkled. "Fair, sir. Very fair. You won't regret it." I called the foreman, Mr. Frank. I told him to fix up a room for him in the farmhands' quarters. I told him to give him food, clean clothes. The next day he started in the horse pastures. Thomas worked. He worked more than any farmhand I had. He woke up before everyone else, went to sleep after everyone else, never complained, never asked for a day off, just worked. In 2 weeks it was clear. He was a good worker, honest, dedicated. I called him, told him he could stay. He thanked me, almost in tears. The months passed. Thomas became part of the farm. He took on the hardest tasks, repaired fences, cleared pastures, helped with the harvest. Everyone liked him, but there was one thing I noticed. He looked at Isabella. It wasn't a disrespectful look. It wasn't a lecherous look. It was a look of curiosity, of genuine interest. Isabella would go to the horse pastures, sometimes bringing lunch to the workers, water. She'd stay there for a bit, helping alongside Mary and Dorothy, old housekeepers from the house. And Thomas would watch her, discreetly, but he watched. One day I called him. We talked alone. I asked if there was any problem with my daughter. He turned red. He said no, that he just thought she was beautiful, different, quiet. I explained. I said she was mute, that she had gone through trauma, that she hadn't spoken since she was 12. He listened, didn't ask questions, just said, "I understand, sir, but being mute doesn't make her less of a person, does it?" His answer surprised me. "No, it doesn't." He nodded, went back to work, but kept looking. And then, one afternoon, I saw something that caught me by surprise. Isabella, looking back. She was in the kitchen washing dishes, looked through the window, saw Thomas working outside, shirtless, sweaty, carrying hay bales, and she kept looking for too long to be casual. When he looked at the window, she quickly looked away, turned red, went back to washing dishes, but I had seen it. My daughter had become interested in someone for the first time in her life. I didn't say anything, just observed. In the following weeks I noticed more. Isabella always found an excuse to go to the horse pastures when Thomas was there. She would bring water, bring snacks, stay nearby, and Thomas took advantage, talking to her, even though she didn't respond. He would talk to himself, telling her about the farm, the work, Tennessee. She would listen and sometimes smile. One Sunday morning, after church, I returned home and saw the two of them sitting under the magnolia tree, the same tree where Grace and I had first talked. Thomas was talking. Isabella was listening, both laughing. My daughter was laughing, something I hadn't seen in years. I stopped, watched from afar, and felt something strange in my chest. Fear, hope, jealousy, I didn't know. Liam appeared beside me, saw the two of them too. He said softly, "Dad, what do you think about that?" "I don't know, son, I don't know. He's a good man. He works hard. He treats her well." "I know, but she's my daughter, and he's a farmhand." Liam was silent, then said, "Does it matter to you, him being poor?" I thought. "Did it matter to me?" I said, "I don't know, Liam, let me think." But deep down, I already knew. If my daughter had found someone who made her smile again, who was I to stop it? Even if that someone was a landless farmhand who had appeared on the farm 6 months ago with nothing but the clothes on his back. The months passed. Thomas continued working on the farm, continued talking with Isabella, and she continued smiling. It became routine. Every Sunday after lunch, the two of them would sit under the magnolia tree. He would talk, she would listen. Sometimes she would draw and show him. He would look, praise, ask about the drawings. She would point, gesticulate, trying to explain without words. And he understood, or at least pretended to understand. And that was already more than many people had done for her. Michael approved. He said Thomas was a hard-working, honest man who treated his sister with respect, that if they liked each other, why not? Even with my son being a womanizer the way he was, he knew how to recognize sincerity. Liam also approved. He found it amusing to see his sister all nervous when Thomas appeared. He teased her the way a younger brother teases. She would get red, slap him, but she was happy. Olivia came to visit one Sunday, saw the two of them together. Afterward, she called me aside. She said she thought it was beautiful, that Isabella deserved to be happy, that after everything she had been through, she deserved to have someone who liked her. I agreed, but I was scared. Scared that Thomas would leave, scared that he would hurt her, scared that my daughter would get attached and then suffer again. The months passed, but I wasn't foolish. I saw what was happening. I saw my daughter falling in love, and a father protects. I called Mr. Frank, my trusted foreman, a serious, hard-working man who had been on the farm for 20 years. If there was anyone I trusted to make inquiries, it was him. I sent him to the neighboring town to find out about Thomas's parents, about his family, to see if the story he had told was true. Mr. Frank returned 3 days later, bringing information. He said Thomas's parents lived in a simple cabin on the outskirts of town. His father worked as a mason, his mother took in laundry. Humble but honest people. Everyone in the neighborhood spoke well of them. He did indeed have 6 children spread across America, but Thomas was the only one who sent money religiously every month. The neighbors said they saw him arriving there, bringing groceries, clothes, helping however he could. The other siblings were out of touch. Some sent letters, but no money. They surely lived hand to mouth. But Thomas, even earning little, even living far away, took care of his parents. Mr. Frank said more. He said the story of the lost land was true, that Thomas had tried to farm in Tennessee, had taken out a loan, then came the drought, and he had lost everything, and that he didn't drink, didn't gamble, wasn't troublesome. He was hard-working, serious, a man of his word. He wasn't educated, but he had character. He even said Thomas had a girlfriend in Tennessee. He liked her, thought of marrying her, but when he lost his land, when he had nothing left, the girl left him. She was replaced by a young man with more money, a merchant's son, who could provide a house, a good life, a certain future. Thomas suffered, but he didn't make a scene, didn't cause a fuss. He accepted it, picked up the pieces, took his old suitcase, and left to find work, because he still had his parents to help. That touched me. The man had been rejected for not having money, had lost everything, and still hadn't given up. He hadn't become a vagrant. He had sought honest work, sent money to his parents, and moved on. I breathed a sigh of relief. The story checked out. The man was who he said he was. I thanked Mr. Frank and asked for his discretion. He nodded and went back to work. Until one Sunday afternoon, a year and a half after Thomas had arrived, he knocked on my office door. He entered, holding his hat with both hands, nervous. He sat on the edge of the chair, restless, passing the hat from one hand to the other. He took a deep breath and began, "Mr. Sullivan, I came to talk to you about Isabella." My heart tightened. I imagined the worst. He was leaving. He was going to say he couldn't stay anymore, that he had found work elsewhere, but it wasn't that. He continued, "I like her very much, sir, very much. I know she doesn't speak. I know she went through something difficult, but that doesn't matter to me. She is good, she is kind, she is beautiful, she makes me happy." I remained silent, waiting for him to get to his point. He swallowed hard and continued, "I know I am poor, sir. I have no land, I have no house, I have nothing but my health, but I work hard. I am honest, I don't drink, I don't gamble, and I wanted to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." A poor farmhand asking to marry the silent heiress. This is a moment that could go terribly wrong. But James, a man who has learned the hard way what truly matters, is about to be tested. The words echoed in the office. Marriage. Thomas wanted to marry Isabella. I looked at him, speechless. Brave man, I thought. Bold, yet humble, asking to marry my daughter. I asked, "Have you talked to her about this?" He shook his head. "No, sir. I wanted to speak with you first, ask for your blessing, do things the right way. We are just friends, and if she doesn't want to," he lowered his head, "then I accept. I won't force her, I won't insist, but I think she likes me too, by the way she looks, by the way she smiles when I arrive." I stood up, went to the window, and looked outside, at the horse pastures, at the blue sky, at the clouds passing by. I thought of Grace, what she would say. She would approve. Would she want her daughter to marry a farmhand? But her voice came into my head. "Money doesn't matter, Jim. You yourself realized that not long ago. What matters is character. What matters is if he will treat her well, if he will love her, if he will stay by her side." I turned back to Thomas. "Do you love her?" He raised his head, his eyes shining. "I love her, sir, with all my heart. And will you treat her well? Will you be patient with her? Will you accept that she doesn't speak? Will you take care of her?" "I will, sir. I promise. I will spend my whole life taking care of her. She will never lack anything. She will never suffer. I swear." I looked at him, searching for lies, searching for falsehood, but I only saw sincerity. He had the look of an abandoned puppy, you know. I took a deep breath. "All right, Thomas. You have my blessing, but with one condition." He stood up. "Anything, sir. You're going to ask her, but I want to be there. I want to see with my own eyes if she reciprocates your love. You will let her choose. If she says yes, in her own way, with a gesture, a nod, whatever it is, you two will marry. If she says no, you respect it. And you continue working here as always, without resentment, without pressure. Fair, fair, sir. Very fair. When do you want to do this?" "Now, sir, if you please." I nodded. "Let's go." We both left the office, walked through the yard, my heart pounding, my hands sweating. Isabella was under the magnolia tree, sitting on the grass, drawing in her notebook as always. When she saw us coming together, she looked up, surprised. She put her notebook aside. We approached. Thomas was pale, nervous. Me too. I sat on a nearby log. I said to Isabella, "Sit here, my daughter. Thomas wants to tell you something." She looked at me, then at Thomas, curious, and sat on the grass again. Thomas knelt in front of her, his hands trembling, and began to speak, his voice low and shaky. "Isabella, I came here a year and a half ago. I had nothing, just an old suitcase and a desire to work. Your father gave me a chance, let me stay, and I am grateful for that. But do you know what was the best thing that happened since I came here?" She shook her head. "It was meeting you." She blushed, lowered her head. He continued, "You are different from all the women I have ever met. You don't need to speak to be heard. You don't need to shout to be strong. You are kind, beautiful, talented. And I fell in love with you." Isabella raised her head, her eyes wide, tears beginning to form. He took a deep breath and continued, "I know I have nothing to offer. I have no house, I have no land, I have no money, but I have this here." He pointed to his chest, to his heart. "And this heart is yours. If you want it, I will take care of you for the rest of my life. I will work so you never lack anything. I will respect you. I will love you. I will stay by your side always." He took her hand, held it carefully. "Isabella, will you marry me?" The silence that fell was absolute. Even the birds stopped singing. I looked at my daughter, her face wet with tears, her eyes fixed on Thomas. She opened her mouth, tried to speak as she always tried when emotion was too strong, but nothing came out. She tried again, forced it, her throat constricted. Nothing. She closed her mouth, frustrated, but then she did something else. She nodded her head, once, twice, 3 times. "Yes, yes, yes," and she threw herself into his arms. She hugged him tight, crying soundlessly, but happy, visibly happy. Thomas hugged her back, squeezed her, tears streaming down his face too. I sat there on that log, watching my daughter in the arms of the man she loved, and I cried too. I cried with joy. I cried with relief. I cried because after 12 years of suffering, my daughter had found happiness. I stood up, approached, and placed my hand on Thomas's shoulder. He looked at me, his eyes red, and I said, "Welcome to the family, my son." He stood up, hugged me, almost too tight. He thanked me, said he would take good care of her, that he would honor the trust I had placed in him. I knew he would. I saw it in his eyes. I saw it in the way he held my daughter, with care, with love. Isabella hugged me too, buried her face in my chest, cried, and I held her, my daughter, my Isabella, who was getting married. We scheduled the wedding for January 1980. A few months of preparation, enough time to do everything properly. Isabella was radiant. I had never seen her so happy. She walked around the house dancing alone, smiling at everything. There was a light in her eyes that I hadn't seen since before the accident. Olivia came to spend a few days at the farm to help her sister with the preparations. The two spent hours choosing dresses, flowers, decorations, communicating through gestures, drawings, notes, and they laughed a lot. Thomas continued working in the horse pastures, but now it was different. He was engaged, he was almost family. Some farmhands greeted him, congratulated him, but others didn't like it. I heard rumors. Liam told me first. He said he had heard talk in the farmhands' quarters, people speaking ill, saying Thomas was an opportunist, that he had flirted with the boss's mute daughter to get ahead in life, that if they had known I would allow marriage to a farmhand, they would have invested in the little silent one too. Little silent one. They called my girl Little Silent One. My blood boiled. Michael confirmed it. He said there were 3 or 4 farmhands spreading poison, talking in corners, creating intrigue. I asked for their names. He told me. The next day, early in the morning, I went to the horse pastures, ordered work to stop, gathered everyone, about 40 men in the middle of the field, everyone quiet, knowing something heavy was about to go down. I looked at them, one by one, searching for those who had spoken. I began to speak in a loud, firm voice, for everyone to hear clearly. I said that some comments had reached my ears, disrespectful comments about my daughter and about Thomas. The silence grew heavier. I continued. I said that whoever thought Thomas was an opportunist was mistaken, that he had come here with nothing, that he worked harder than anyone, that he had won Isabella's heart, with respect, with patience, with character, and that my daughter was not a little silent one at all, that she was a woman of worth, that the fact that she didn't speak didn't diminish her in any way, and that I was very sorry that she hadn't been interested in any of them. The men lowered their heads. No one looked at me. I continued. I said that if anyone had anything to say, they should say it to my face now, that I was there to listen. No one spoke, all silent. I waited, gave them time, absolute silence. Then I said the last part in an even firmer voice. I said that whoever had no respect for my family, the door was open for them to leave, that they could take their things and go, that I would not accept disrespect, would not accept intrigue, and would not accept envy, that whoever wanted to stay should stay, work well, and respect everyone. Whoever didn't want to could leave now. I looked at the three who had spoken, looked them straight in the eyes, challenging them. And you? Are you staying or leaving? The three turned pale, swallowing hard. One of them mumbled, "I'll stay, boss. Sorry, I didn't mean any harm." And the others? They also mumbled apologies, heads down, tails between their legs. I nodded. "All right, but if I hear one more word against my daughter or against Thomas, you'll be gone the same day, without warning, without anything. Understood?" "Understood, boss." I clapped my hands. "Get back to work." Subject closed. The men dispersed, went back to the hay bales. No one looked at Thomas with a bad face anymore, at least not openly. Thomas came to me afterward. He hadn't seen any of that scene. He thanked me, said he had heard the comments, that he was suffering because of it, but that he didn't want to cause trouble. I said it wasn't a problem, that he was family now. And we defend family. He hugged me emotionally. He came to dinner at the old Kentucky homestead every night now. He sat at the table with us. At first, he was uncomfortable, shy, but little by little he loosened up. He talked to Michael about work, to Liam about football, to me about future plans. I asked where they would live after the wedding. He said he didn't know, that maybe he would rent a small house in town or stay in the farmhands' quarters itself. I said no, neither option would do. I could have invited him to live in the old Kentucky homestead with us after the wedding. There was plenty of space. But I remembered my own marriage when I brought Grace to live here. We didn't have privacy. We couldn't truly be a couple, living under the same roof as our in-laws. Grace had suffered because of it. I had suffered because of it. I wouldn't do the same to my daughter. So, I had another idea, a better, fairer one. I told Thomas I would build a good house for them near the old Kentucky homestead, close enough so Isabella wouldn't be far, but far enough for them to have privacy, to be a couple, to build their lives. It was a wedding gift for my son-in-law and my daughter. He tried to refuse, said he couldn't accept, that he was already receiving too much. I insisted. I said it wasn't a favor, it was a necessity, that every couple needed their own corner, their own space, and that they would have it. Besides, my daughter was raised like a princess. She couldn't receive less than that I wouldn't accept no for an answer. He accepted, thanked me with tears in his eyes, said he would pay me back one day with work, with dedication. I said he didn't need to pay anything, that he had already given me the greatest gift. He had made my daughter smile again. Then something funny happened. I ended up giving myself away accidentally. Then I said, "And there's one more thing. I want your father to build your house. He's a mason, isn't he?" Thomas widened his eyes. "Yes, sir, but how do you know?" I blurted it out awkwardly. "Well, Thomas, I had to know. I had your life, your family investigated. I wasn't going to let my daughter marry someone whose past I didn't know." He stayed quiet, processing. Then he asked, "And what did you find out?" "That you're an honest, hard-working man who takes care of his parents, who's the only one of your siblings who sends money, who lost everything but didn't lose his character, and who was rejected by a girl who didn't know how to value you." He lowered his head, embarrassed. I continued, "There's no shame in that, Thomas. You did what you had to do, and now you're here, building a new life with my daughter, and I approve." He looked at me, his eyes moist. "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. You don't know what this means to me." Then I returned to the subject. "Your father. I want him to come help build the house. I will pay for his work, and I want your parents to stay here for a few days until the house is ready so they can meet Isabella, see where their son will live, and know that everything is all right." Thomas was speechless. He hugged me tightly, thanking me, speechless. The next day, Thomas himself went to pick up his parents in town. He left early in the morning, took the wagon, and returned in the late afternoon with them. I offered for him to go with the car, but he didn't know how to drive. He thanked me for the trust. Mr. Patrick Anderson got down first, a short, strong man, with broad shoulders from carrying weight his whole life. His hands were calloused, thick, full of scars from cement and bricks. His face was sunburnt, but his gaze was firm. Mrs. Barbara Anderson came behind, small, thin, shy, in a simple but clean, well-pressed dress, her hair tied in a bun, her hands also calloused from washing other people's clothes so much. I received them on the porch, offered them coffee, explained everything, that their son was going to marry my daughter, that I was going to build a house for the couple, and that I wanted Mr. Patrick to help with the construction, that I would pay for his work, that it wasn't a favor, it was a job. Mr. Patrick was moved, took off his hat, pressed it against his chest, said it was an honor, sir, that he never imagined his son would marry a farmer's daughter, that he would do the best work of his life, that the house would be strong, beautiful, to last generations. Mrs. Barbara cried with joy, with relief, said that Thomas deserved it, that he had suffered a lot, that he had lost everything in Tennessee, and that now God was rewarding him, that it was a miracle. I took them to meet Isabella. She was in the backyard, embroidering. When she saw Thomas's parents, she blushed, shy, but smiled. Mrs. Barbara approached slowly, looked at my daughter with affection, then hugged her tightly, said she was beautiful, that she was a blessing from God, that she would be her daughter too now. Mr. Patrick took off his hat, greeted her respectfully with a bowed head, said she was welcome in the family. Isabella cried. She hugged them both. I started construction the next day. I hired 2 more masons from town to help, but the one commanding the work was Mr. Patrick, a man who understood everything. He knew how to level land, how to calculate the amount of material, how to lay bricks in alignment. He was a good mason, one of those who learned through practice, but who was worth more than many degreed engineers. Thomas left the horse pastures to work on the house. He worked side by side with his father, both, father and son, building the young man's future. It was beautiful to see. A good-sized house with a living room, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a full bathroom, painted white with a red roof, a yard with space for a garden. I thought ahead to the grandchildren, who, God willing, would send many. His parents stayed at the old Kentucky homestead during the 2 months of construction. I gave them a good room, with a double bed, clean bedding, a window with a view of the orchard. But Mrs. Barbara couldn't rest. She woke up early before everyone else. She would go to the kitchen to help the housekeepers, wash dishes, sweep floors, and insisted on doing laundry too, the laundry for the whole house. I tried to explain. Mrs. Barbara, you are a guest. You don't need to work. Your husband is being paid for his service, building the house for his son. You can rest. But she shook her head. I can't sit still, Mr. Sullivan. I don't feel comfortable. I've worked my whole life. I don't know how to sit with my arms crossed. It's even dangerous for me. I might get sick. I tried again. But you are family now. My son-in-law's mother, my daughter's mother-in-law. She smiled, thanked me. But the next day she was there again, washing clothes, helping in the kitchen. She couldn't stop. I ended up letting her. I understood. It was her way. Humble people, accustomed to working their whole lives, don't know how to receive without giving something in return. And she felt useful that way. So, I let her. Mrs. Barbara and Isabella got along well. They spent hours together. They communicated through gestures and notes. Isabella wrote. Mrs. Barbara read slowly, with difficulty, but she read, and she responded. She taught recipes, taught crochet stitches, taught household tricks, treated Isabella like a daughter. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and saw the 2 of them hugging, Mrs. Barbara crying, Isabella holding her, patting her back. Mary was also there, all sad. I approached, asked what had happened, if someone had done something, if she was feeling unwell. Mrs. Barbara wiped her eyes, shook her head. No, Mr. Sullivan, nothing bad. I was just talking about my grandchildren with Isabella and Mary, the children of my other boys. How many grandchildren do you have? 7, Mr. Sullivan. 7 little grandchildren spread across America. 1 in Atlanta, 2 in Ohio, 3 in Florida, 1 in Texas. But I never see them. It's been years since I've seen them. Only Sarah sends me letters with photos sometimes. They grow up too fast. She fell silent, then continued. I dream, you know? I dream of gathering the whole family for a Sunday lunch, everyone together, my 6 children, my 7 grandchildren, Patrick and I in the middle. But it's just a dream. Life doesn't allow it. Poverty doesn't let us, she cried again. We've spread out too much. Everyone went to a different place to look for a better life. Isabella hugged her tighter, and I stood there watching, feeling sorry for her. Mr. Patrick would say every day at the end of the work, as he washed his hands at the faucet, "My son is lucky, Mr. Sullivan. Your daughter is a rare gem, a beautiful, talented girl with a good heart. And you, who could have turned your back on my boy, gave your blessing. I will never forget that." In 2 months, the house was ready, beautiful, meticulously crafted, every detail thought out, every brick in place. Isabella chose the curtain colors, embroidered the tablecloth, crocheted covers for the furniture, preparing her nest with care and anticipation. December has arrived. Daniel came from the capital with Jessica and my granddaughter Chloe. They stayed for a week, helping with the preparations. Jessica and Isabella got along well. They spent hours together, sewing, cooking, laughing. The wedding eve was bustling. The house was full of people, relatives I hadn't seen in years, friends, neighbors, everyone wanting to help, wanting to see Jim's mute daughter get married. I had to hire extra cooks. We killed 3 hogs, a 3-tiered cake that Olivia ordered from the best bakery in town. We filled the house with flowers, white roses, lilies, daisies, their sweet scent invading every room. We arranged the main living room for the ceremony, chairs lined up, an aisle in the middle, an improvised altar at the front. The pastor was going to come and officiate at the house itself, because Isabella wanted it that way. The night before the wedding, I went to her room, knocked on the door. She opened it. She was in a white nightgown, her hair loose, beautiful. I entered, sat on the edge of the bed. She sat beside me. I stayed silent for a while, just looking at her. My daughter, who tomorrow would no longer be just mine. I asked, "Are you happy, my daughter?" She nodded. "Yes," with a huge smile. "Are you sure? Are you sure this is what you want?" She took my hand, squeezed it, looked deep into my eyes, and nodded again. "Yes, yes, yes." I took a deep breath, said, "Your mother would be so happy to see you like this. She would love Thomas. She would love to see you as a bride." Her eyes filled with tears. She lowered her head. I lifted her face, wiped a tear with my thumb. I said, "She's watching, my daughter. Wherever she is, she's watching and she's happy. I'm sure." She hugged me tightly, cried on my chest, and I held her, as I had held her so many times, since she was a little girl. The wedding day dawned beautiful, strong sun, blue sky without a single cloud, birds singing in the trees, as if even nature had dressed up for the party. I woke up early, bathed, dressed, black suit, tie, polished shoes, looked in the mirror, a 9-year-old man looking back, graying hair, wrinkles around his eyes, but still standing, still going. I didn't think I was ugly, no. I had my vanity, despite everything. I went downstairs. The house was already bustling. Housekeepers running, cooks in the kitchen, Olivia giving orders, adjusting every missing detail. Mr. Patrick and Mrs. Barbara had gone to their own house after the house was finished, but returned a few days earlier to help with the wedding preparations. I had clothes made for them, for both of them. I called the town tailor. He took Mr. Patrick's measurements, made him a complete suit, pants, jacket, white shirt, tie, new shoes too. The man had never worn a suit in his life. When he put it on, he was uncomfortable fidgeting with the collar, but he looked elegant, dignified. For Mrs. Barbara, I had a light blue dress made, simple but beautiful, with lace on the collar, closed shoes. She cried when she received it. She said she had never had new clothes like that. She thanked me 1,000 times. I said there was no need to thank me, that they were the parents of the son-in-law who would be at my daughter's wedding, that they had to be well dressed for the photos. On the morning of the wedding, the team I had hired from town arrived. 3 young women, hairdressers and makeup artists, set up a kind of improvised salon in one of the bedrooms of the old Kentucky homestead. They did all the young women's makeup, the housekeepers who wanted it, the daughters of the farmhands, Olivia, Jessica, Daniel's wife. But the main work was the bride. Isabella spent hours in there. They washed her hair, made curls, pinned them up, put on the veil, carefully made up her face, foundation, powder, blush, soft lipstick, mascara on her eyelashes. When she came out, she was impeccable, too beautiful, like a princess, her white dress, her veil, her hair neatly styled, her makeup light but perfect. Mrs. Barbara saw her and cried again. She said her daughter-in-law was the most beautiful bride she had ever seen in her life, and I agreed. My daughter was radiant. Michael and Liam were arranging chairs in the main living room, but I noticed that Michael was acting strange that day. He kept glancing toward the gate, restless, and I soon understood why. Michael had invited Sophia, the mother of my grandson, Ethan, whom he hadn't fully acknowledged. They never married. That whole story, Michael chasing girls all over the place. A sworn womanizer, never wanted commitment, just fun. But then, Sophia got pregnant by him at 16. A beautiful girl, a figure like a violin, a shy smile. But when her belly grew, he didn't have the decency to ask her to marry him. He never failed to send money for the boy's support, though. But to take responsibility, to raise, to care, that was never his intention. Still, Michael never stayed completely away from them. Since Ethan was born, he visited, brought gifts, played with the boy, who that wedding day was already 2.5 years old, mischievous, beautiful, just like his father, and he kept hovering around Sophia, but she didn't make it easy. She accepted the support payments, accepted the father's visits to his son, but never wanted to be with Michael herself, kept her distance, and my son, womanizer that he was, went crazy for her. He would go to her house, invent excuses to see the boy, chat her up, try to win her over, but he wouldn't admit defeat to anyone, not even to me. If you asked him, he'd say it was just for Ethan, but the whole house knew the way he looked at Sophia. And Sophia, my girl, was tough. She didn't accept. She kept to herself, but she never abandoned the boy, nor let Michael get too close. Her father, my former employee, Mr. George Reynolds, watched over his daughter. He had also left the farm soon after the girl got pregnant. He said he no longer wanted to work for me, that the boss's son had dishonored his daughter, and he wasn't going to stay there and be humiliated. I offered money, offered compensation, but he refused. He left with his family, found work on another farm, but made it clear he didn't want Michael near Sophia. They accepted the support payments out of necessity, but always with pride. They never asked for anything beyond what was agreed, never came crying. They accepted the money because it was the boy's right. They only accepted visits to their grandson because it was the boy's right to know his father. But he watched. Every time my son appeared, the old man kept an eye out to prevent any impropriety, and I put myself in his shoes. He was right. He took care of his daughter the way he should have. The girl was 16 when my son took advantage of her. If it were my daughter, I would do the same. Or worse. Who was I to interfere? The man was protecting his family, so I never forced anything. I never tried to convince him to let Michael get closer. I respected and understood. She showed up for Isabella's wedding. Michael had invited his son. He didn't invite her directly. He sent word that he wanted Ethan at the party, and the mother brought him. Of course, a 2.5-year-old child doesn't go anywhere alone. That excuse didn't stick. A beautiful young woman, well-dressed, in a simple but carefully chosen dress, hair tied up, small earrings, clean shoes. She had dressed up. She came with the boy by the hand, Ethan all excited, looking at everything with wide eyes. I quickly went to pick him up. It was rare that I saw my grandson. Michael had brought him to the farm only 3 or 4 times. He was wary of me. He wanted to go back to his mother's arms right away. My staff didn't even know where to look. They knew the story. They knew who Sophia was. They knew about the scandal. But no one was going to say anything. Not at my daughter's wedding. And there was Michael, watching, but quiet, pretending he only wanted to take care of the party. He was arranging chairs that didn't need arranging, straightening tablecloths that were already straight, but his eyes went straight to her, to Sophia, to the way she held the boy, to the way she looked around, a little lost, a little out of place among so many well-dressed people. He approached, picked Ethan up. The boy laughed, hugged his father, and Sophia stood there, not knowing what to do with her arms, keeping her distance. At 4:30, the ceremony began. Everyone sat down. Silence fell. Thomas entered from the side in a fine suit, nervous, pale, went to the altar, and waited. The music began, a violin playing Ave Maria. The door opened, and she appeared in a long white dress, a veil covering her face, a bouquet of white roses in her hands, beautiful, so beautiful, that it took my breath away. I walked to her, offered my arm. She held on, squeezed tightly. I looked into her eyes through the veil. I whispered. Ready? She nodded. Yes. We began to walk down the aisle, passing by the guests, everyone watching, some women already crying. I looked ahead, at Thomas at the altar, watching him look at his bride, his eyes shining, in love, and I thought, this man will take care of her, will love her, will make her happy, in the name of Jesus. We reached the altar. The pastor asked, "Who gives this bride away?" I replied, "I do, her father, James Sullivan." I lifted her veil, kissed her forehead, placed her hand in Thomas's hand, and said softly, only for them to hear, "Take good care of her." He nodded. "I will, I promise." I stepped back. I sat in the first row, beside his parents. The ceremony began. My daughter was married. The years passed. Life on the farm continued slowly, steadily, as it always had been. Isabella and Thomas lived happily in their little house. He continued working in the horse pastures. She took care of the house. And in 1982, their first child came, a boy. They named him William, my first grandson from Isabella, Mrs. Barbara came to spend a few days helping her daughter-in-law with the baby. She taught her how to bathe him, how to change diapers. The two of them stayed there, taking care of the child, happy. In 1984, the second came, a girl, Mia. A few years later, their family was completed with the arrival of their third child, another boy. They named him James, after me. Isabella was radiant, mother of 3 children, a house, a good husband, but not everything was peaceful. I forgot to tell you one thing. I'll go back a bit. It's about Michael. Sometime after Isabella's wedding, Sophia found a boyfriend, a young man from town, hardworking, honest, and they started dating seriously. Michael went crazy, completely crazy. He couldn't stand to see her with someone else, couldn't stand the idea of another man raising his son, of another man touching her. He went to Mr. George Reynolds' house, knocked on the door, asked to speak with Sophia. The old man almost didn't let him, but the girl came out, listened to him, and Michael declared his love for the first time in 3 years. He said he loved her, that he had always loved her, that he had been foolish, idiotic, a womanizer, but that now he had changed, that he wanted to marry her, wanted to commit, wanted to be a real family. Sophia said no. She said it was too late, that he had lost his chance, that she had moved on. He tried again and again and again. He even asked me to go talk to her. He appeared at her house every week, brought presents, brought flowers, apologized, begged, until she accepted. She broke up with her boyfriend, gave Michael a chance. They dated for 6 months. He behaved, was respectful, was present, was the man he should have been from the beginning. In 81, they married. A small, simple but beautiful ceremony. She didn't want anything grand like her sister-in-laws, and Michael brought her to live on the farm, in his own room, in the old Kentucky homestead. He said it was good that way, because he worked there, stayed close, didn't need to build a new house. Sophia was a bit shy at first, living in her father-in-law's house, and with the youngest brother-in-law. Ethan loved it. At 4 years old, the boy ran all over the house, went up and down the stairs, played in the yard. He finally had his father present. He finally was a real family. But soon after they moved in, something terrible happened. It was on an April afternoon. I was in the office. I heard a scream, a loud crash. I was terrified, then crying, a child's desperate crying. I ran, left the office, went to the living room, and saw Ethan on the floor, at the bottom of the stairs, fallen, his arm twisted, his head bleeding, crying, screaming in pain. Sophia knelt beside him, desperate, also crying, trying to pick him up, but afraid of hurting him more. Michael came running from the horse pastures. Someone had gone to get him. He saw his son on the floor, turned white. I picked the boy up carefully. He screamed in pain, his broken arm dangling. I ordered someone to get the car. We rushed him to the town hospital. I, Michael, and Sophia, all 3 terrified. At the hospital, the doctor examined him, said it was serious. A broken arm, head trauma. He needed to be admitted, his arm needed surgery, and his head needed observation. Ethan was hospitalized for a week of hell. We almost died of worry. I had always feared this, children falling down the stairs, and it happened to my grandson, to the little one, 1 minute of distraction. Sophia had gone to get a coat, and the boy went down the stairs alone. He slipped, fell. No one saw if it was from the very top of the stairs, in the middle, or what. 1 minute, that's all. And we almost lost him. For a terrifying moment, history was repeating itself. Another accident, another hospital, another child's life on the line. You have to wonder, when will this family finally find peace? The two of them were devastated. Sophia blamed herself. She said it was her fault, that she had left him alone, that she was a bad mother. Michael also said he had failed as a father. We took him home. Sophia never left his side again, clinging, watching every movement, afraid it would happen again. Thank God, the boy recovered. His arm healed, his head was fine, no lingering effects, but the scar on his arm remained forever, a mark of a terrible day. My youngest son, Liam, also married in 1984 to Abigail, Olivia's husband's sister, a beautiful, cheerful, hard-working girl. He had fallen in love. They dated for a year, asked for my blessing. I married them. I also built a house for Liam on the same property, near Isabella's. I wanted my children close. I wanted my grandchildren, my cousins. Growing up together, the farm was full again, full of life, of children running, of laughter, of noise. It was a new generation. On Sunday mornings, we would gather everyone. Lunch at the old Kentucky homestead. Me, my 5 children, my sons-in-law, my daughters-in-law, my grandchildren. A huge, abundant, noisy table, and I would look around at my children, at my grandchildren, and feel gratitude. In 1991, I was 60 years old, my hair completely white, my body more tired, but still working, still managing the farm. Michael and Liam handled most of it now, but I supervised, offered my opinions, bugged them, as they sometimes said. Isabella never spoke again, mute since 11, but happy, fulfilled, mother of 3 children. Thomas continued to be the perfect son-in-law, hard-working, dedicated. He loved my daughter as he had promised. He never failed, never disappointed. Mr. Patrick and Mrs. Barbara visited often, spent seasons at the farm, got to know their grandchildren, helped with the children. Mrs. Barbara had finally achieved her dream, seeing her grandchildren grow up. Not all of them, but a part of them. Daniel remained in the capital, a successful doctor, his practice full, earning well, very well. 3 children with Jessica, Chloe, the eldest, then came Lucas, and finally little Ella. He would visit during the end-of-year holidays, Christmas, New Year's, arriving with his whole family, cars full of luggage, presents, food, and he would send the children in the middle of the year too, during school vacations. They would stay about 15 days on the farm, running through the horse pastures, playing with their cousins, learning to ride horses, taking showers from the garden hose. Jessica came along sometimes, other times she didn't, because Daniel would take her traveling the world. My son visited Japan, France, and Italy, places I had never even dreamed of seeing, but he knew them and liked to tell stories, show photos, talk about the things he had seen. He always brought us presents: French perfume for Olivia, a Swiss watch for Michael, a German knife for Liam, a beautiful silk scarf for Isabella, and for me, a Cuban cigar and Scotch whiskey. Fine things I didn't even truly appreciate, but I kept them with affection. He said it was his obligation, that he had studied with my money, that the good life he had was thanks to me, that he wanted to reciprocate. I said there was no need, that seeing him well was gift enough, but he insisted, and I accepted with pride to see my doctor, son, well-traveled, living a good life. Olivia had 4 children. On Sundays, she would show up with her husband and children, the car full, the house getting noisy again, the girls running through the yard. Matthew was the only boy. She and her husband had 2 more girls after the first 2, making for a busy household, but she managed it all with Grace's steady nature. Even living far away, she never truly drifted apart. She was a present daughter, the kind who calls, who asks, who worries, and it was around this time, at around 60 years old, that I met her. I was on the porch, as always, having breakfast when I heard the gallop, a horse coming fast down the road. I looked and saw a woman riding a black horse, galloping like a man, erect posture, a leather hat, long pants, boots, loose hair blowing in the wind. The gate was open. She entered as if she owned the place. She dismounted with agility, tied the reins where she could, took off her hat, and walked to the porch. Beautiful, very beautiful. Her face marked by the sun, light eyes, about 30 years old perhaps, but with the presence of someone who knew what she wanted. "Good morning. Are you James Sullivan?" "I am." "And you are?" "Jennifer. Jennifer Peterson, daughter of John Peterson, from the neighboring farm." I stood up. John Peterson had been my friend, my father's friend, a good man, a respected farmer, but he had died 3 months ago. A heart attack, my poor friend. "Your father was a good man." She paused, her face hardened. "He was, they say. I didn't know him that well." The coolness in her voice surprised me. I offered coffee. She accepted, sat in the chair opposite mine, without ceremony, crossed her legs, slowly took off her gloves, placed her hat on the table, and looked at me in a way that completely unnerved me. A penetrating, direct gaze. She looked at my mouth when I spoke, then at my eyes, then at my mouth again, as if she were studying, analyzing, evaluating. I felt uncomfortable for the first time in decades. I felt intimidated by a woman. Me, Jim, 60 years old, a respected farmer, father of 5 children, a widower for 24 years, a man who commanded 50 employees without batting an eye, was there stirring my coffee, adjusting my cup, not knowing where to put my hands. She noticed and seemed to enjoy it. "What brings you here, Miss Peterson?" My voice came out a bit hoarse. I cleared my throat. I tried again. She smiled slightly, that little smile of someone who knows the effect they have. She slowly drank her coffee, looking at me over the rim of the cup. Then she put it down, leaned forward, her eyes fixed on mine. "Inheritance. The lawyer informed me that my father died and left the farm to me. I've come to resolve the situation." Her proximity made me even more nervous. A light but present perfume, a good smell of her hair, of fine soap, of a well-cared-for woman. It had been so long since I had smelled a woman like that up close. Besides my daughters, who don't count, of course. I looked away. I looked at the horse pastures in the distance, trying to compose myself, but she kept looking at me. I felt the weight of that gaze on me. "And your brothers, David and Sarah? They didn't want the farm?" She made a face. "My brothers live in the city. David is a lawyer. Sarah married an industrialist. Neither of them wants anything to do with land. They said I could have the farm, that it's worth nothing compared to what they already have, that it's my problem now. But they have a right to the inheritance. They do, and they'll receive it in cash. I've already settled it with the lawyer. The farm stays with me. They receive the value in cash. Everyone's satisfied, or at least pretending to be." She had a way of speaking. She spoke whatever came to mind, without measuring, without posing. "And you also live in the city, don't you?" "I do. I left here at 16 and never came back until now. My 2 sons are already married, live far away, each with their own lives. They don't want the farm. They want me to sell it quickly and go back to the city." I spoke without thinking, stunned. "Sons married?" She noticed my surprise and responded quickly with that wide smile of hers. "How old do you think I am?" I looked at her, tried to guess, but my head was just thinking silly things. 28 years old, 30 at most. She burst out laughing, and it was the most delightful laugh in the world. I just thought, this woman is out of my league. She's from the city. She's cultured. She's too beautiful. She's too young. What would she want with an old 60-year-old farmer? Control yourself, man, control yourself, for God's sake. But the more I thought about it, the more I looked at her. Her light brown hair shining in the sun, her light eyes, her mouth smiling broadly, and I felt like a fool, an old fool. She composed herself, adjusting in the chair. "I'm 42 years old, Mr. Sullivan, 42. Still young. How could she look so much younger? Was it the cream she put on her face? And your husband, Miss Peterson, doesn't he mind you coming here alone?" She became serious. The smile disappeared. "I've been a widow for 12 years. My husband died of cancer. He was 30 years older than me. He left a fortune, left everything to me and the children. But love he never left, because I never had it." Her sincerity disarmed me. I was at a loss for words. She continued, "My children have moved on with their lives. I was left with the money and the loneliness. And your wife, Mr. Sullivan, where is she? I'd like to meet my neighbor." I settled back in my chair, clasped my hands, looked at the horse pastures. She died 24 years ago. She studied me for a few seconds, then murmured softly, "By the way you look, by your silence, you loved her." I wasn't so lucky. I stayed silent. To love like that, I never knew what it was like. It was an arranged marriage by my father. I lived to raise my children. Only now am I discovering who I am. I think I'm more farm than city, more earth than luxury. I laughed for the first time that morning. "You're good with a horse?" Then I asked her what she wanted from me. The question came out more direct than I intended. She smiled again, that little half smile that made me flustered. "I want you to teach me how to run this farm, or recommend someone you trust. I'll pay well." The words echoed in my head. A rich, independent woman who could hire any manager, any expensive consultant from the capital, was asking me to teach her. It didn't make sense, but at the same time, I thought quickly. If I didn't accept, she would hire someone else. Some young, handsome agricultural engineer from the capital. She would spend the day with him, learning from him, smiling at him like that. And just imagining it, I felt a pang in my chest. Jealousy, an absurd jealousy for a woman I had just met, for a woman who wasn't even for me, but I couldn't help it. "All right," I replied, trying to sound calm. "I'll teach you." She smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. When do we start?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll be at your farm at 6 a.m. I'll be waiting." When she rode off on her horse, I was mesmerized, watching. I barely slept that day, and I was there the next day, 6 o'clock sharp, mounted on my horse. John Peterson's farm, now Jennifer's, was 15 minutes from mine. Pastures, well-kept horse stables, a beautiful manor house, but you could tell it needed management, someone who understood. She was waiting for me on the porch in long pants, a white shirt, a hat, her hair loose, beautiful, and from then on, I went every day, every single day, at 6 a.m., staying until late afternoon, teaching, explaining, showing her how to manage, talking to her employees, and with each passing day, I noticed more things. I noticed that she had bought a collection of clothes because she never received me in the same outfit. She changed 3-4 times a day, went into the house, came back with a different blouse, went to make coffee, came back with her hair loose, wet, went to get water, came back with a different perfume. And all her clothes were beautiful, well cut, fitting in the right places, as if they had been thought out. I noticed she was flirting with me, in her own way, subtle, but flirting. She would lean forward when I spoke, touch my arm when she laughed. She looked deep into my eyes when I explained something, bit her lip when she was thinking, sighed near me. And I, old fool, pretended not to notice, but I noticed everything. She had employees on her farm, a foreman, farm hands, and I observed how she treated them. Polite, kind, respectful, but distant, formal. No side smile, no lingering glance, no touch on the arm. Only with me, only with me. She was like that, and it drove me crazy. Crazy with happiness, crazy with fear, crazy with desire, because I thought I would never allow myself to feel this again, but I was feeling it and didn't know what to do. My heart beat faster when I saw her. After a month of going there every day, spending the whole day with her, something happened that almost killed me. Listen to this. It was late afternoon, a Friday. I was already saying goodbye, putting away my notes, picking up my hat to leave. She entered the office where I was, holding something in her hand, a large, thick envelope, full. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to settle up with you." "Settle what?" "The payment for your work. It's been a month since you've been coming here every day, teaching me, dedicating your time. We didn't agree on a price, but I know I owe you." She held out the envelope to me. I saw money, a lot of money. You could tell by the edges. "I can't accept it." "How can you not accept it?" "I did it out of kindness, Miss Peterson. I don't charge. We're neighbors. I knew your father. Besides, my sons manage my farm. Michael and Liam handle everything. I don't need to work so much, and I don't like to feel useless. It's done me good to come here and have something to do." She stood still, looking at me, at the envelope, at me again. Then she took 2 steps forward and came close, very close, closer than she had come all that month. So close I could smell her perfume. My heart pounded. She looked at me directly in the eyes, that penetrating gaze that made me flustered. "You're going to accept it. Yes. Her voice came out soft, low, different. Before I could respond, she slowly raised her hand and opened my pants pocket, the front right pocket. I froze completely. She slipped the envelope into my pocket, very slowly, gently pushing it in. And as she did so, she came even closer, her face inches from mine, her lips near my ear, and whispered, "You deserve it. I don't miss it. What I miss is something else." Her breath was warm on my ear, her body close to mine, her fingers still in my pocket, adjusting the envelope, taking longer than necessary. I felt my heart explode, race, my blood pressure rose, my head spun, my legs gave way. I swear to God, I thought I was going to have a heart attack right there. I thought I was going to die, fall to the floor, die in the arms of that woman I barely knew, but who was already driving me crazy. She slowly backed away, 2 steps back, looking at me with that little half smile, knowing exactly what she had done to me. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Sullivan." And she left, leaving me standing there, hand on my chest, heart pounding, legs weak, sweating cold. I sat in the nearest chair. I took a deep breath, tried to calm down. I put my hand in my pocket. I felt the thick envelope, full of money I didn't want, but had accepted, because she had put it there with those fingers, with that siren-like voice, with that body close to mine. And I thought, for God's sake, this woman is going to kill me. After 24 years of living like a ghost, James is suddenly, shockingly, alive. This bold, beautiful woman didn't just offer him a payment, she offered him a future. But was he ready to take it? At 60 years old, I was feeling like a 20-year-old boy again, completely lost, completely in love, completely in her hands, without anything even having happened. And the worst part, she knew. She knew the power she had over me and used it with pleasure, with mischief, with intention. I got on my horse and went home disoriented, still dizzy, my heart still pounding. There was something that always happened to me on Saturdays and Sundays. I would get sad because it was a day off, a day I wouldn't go to her farm. We had agreed on that. Even if my family came to visit, I was still distracted. Then something different happened after that first payment. It was Sunday after lunch. I was in the living room watching television alone. The children had all gone to their own homes. Isabella and Thomas had gone out with the boys. Michael was inside with Sophia. By this time, they already had 4 children, including Ethan. Liam had gone to town with Abigail. The house was quiet, a pleasant Sunday afternoon silence, until I heard the gallop, a horse coming fast. I looked, and it was her, riding the black horse, coming down the road on a Sunday when she shouldn't have been there. I thought, it's the power of my thoughts that brings her. My heart pounded, as it always did when I saw her. She dismounted, tied the reins, and walked to the porch, this time in a dress, a light printed dress, different, too beautiful. I went to meet her, greeted her. She smiled, that smile of hers that disarmed me. She said she was alone, had nothing to do at home, that she didn't want to wait until Monday to see me. She had taken her horse and come, without warning, without asking permission, just came. Her sincerity struck me deeply, admitting that she wanted to see me, that she couldn't wait. It was everything I wanted to hear. I offered coffee. She accepted, sat in the chair opposite mine, and it was at that moment that Isabella appeared. She came with Mia, her daughter, 7 years old. The two had stayed home, hadn't gone out with Thomas. Isabella stopped, saw Jennifer, looked at me curiously. I stood up, made the introductions. I introduced Jennifer, said who she was, John Peterson's daughter, the neighboring farmer, that I was teaching her to manage the property. Isabella greeted her in her own way, without speaking but smiling gently. I think she thought, now I understand why Dad is helping her. Jennifer waited, expecting her to say something but nothing. She looked at me, confused, then looked at Isabella again. And it was at that moment that Mia, seeing the scene without any shyness, explained, "Mommy doesn't talk. She's mute." Just like that, simple, direct, the way children are. Jennifer looked at the girl, then at Isabella, then at me. Ah, I see. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't pity, it was just understanding. She knelt down to Mia's height, smiled. "And what's your mother's name, beautiful?" "Isabella." "And I'm Mia. What a beautiful name. And your mother, Isabella, does she understand everything we say?" Mia nodded. Yes, she understands everything. She just can't talk. But she understands. Jennifer smiled, looked at Isabella. So, can I talk to you normally? Isabella nodded emphatically, smiling. Great. Isabella smiled, and then Jennifer talked a lot with my granddaughter. She asked about school, what she liked, if she had siblings, and the two talked, Jennifer asking, Mia answering, animated, enchanted with that beautiful woman who paid attention to her. Isabella went to the kitchen, came back with coffee with cake, served it to Jennifer, and sat there observing, smiling, watching her daughter at ease. After much conversation, Jennifer looked at the girl, stroked her hair, and said with affection, You know, Mia, I always wanted to have a girl. I had 2 boys. I love them passionately, but I always dreamed of a daughter, someone to comb her hair, to teach her to bake cakes, to play with dolls. Mia's eyes widened. You don't have any girls? I don't. My sons are grown, already married, and I'm left alone. The girl became thoughtful, then said, You can play with me if you want to. Jennifer's face lit up. I can? Yes, you can. I have dolls at home, and Mommy knows how to make very delicious cakes. She can teach you. Jennifer laughed. Her eyes moist, she looked at Isabella, who was also smiling, happy to see the interaction. I'd love to, if your mother lets me. Isabella nodded. Yes, emphatically, inviting, welcoming, and Mia hugged Jennifer, spontaneously, affectionately, like a child does when they like someone. Jennifer hugged her back, squeezed the girl, a tear escaping. And there, on that porch, on that Sunday afternoon, I saw my daughter accepting that woman. And then Michael appeared, coming from the living room with Ethan, the boy already 14 years old, tall, almost a man, my God. Michael saw Jennifer, stopped, and stared. It was a man's stare, a gaze that sweeps, evaluates, appreciates. He looked at her from head to toe, at her loose hair, at the dress that accentuated her figure, at her legs, back to her face, and he kept staring, too long, in the wrong way. The atmosphere changed instantly. It became heavy, awkward. Jennifer noticed. She looked away, uncomfortable. Isabella noticed, looked at her brother, then at me, worried. Ethan noticed, looked at his father, not quite understanding but sensing something was wrong. And I felt my blood boil. My son, looking at the woman I was interested in, with that look of desire, of a man who was thinking things. I stood up stiffly. My voice came out colder than I intended. Michael, this is Miss Peterson, John Peterson's daughter, the neighboring farmer. I'm helping her manage her property. I emphasized Miss and the formality, making it clear, marking territory, without saying the words. Michael finally looked away from her, looked at me, noticed the tone, noticed the tension, composed himself, but slowly. Pleasure, Michael. So, you're the new neighbor? Jennifer greeted him, formal, cool, keeping her distance. Good afternoon, Mr. Michael. I didn't offer Michael coffee. I didn't invite him to sit down. I just stood there between him and Jennifer, forming a barrier. The silence became heavy, awkward. Ethan noticed and pulled his father's arm. Dad, let's go. Mom's waiting. He said we should go quickly. Michael hesitated, looked at Jennifer one more time, quickly, but he looked, then looked at me, and must have seen something in my face, because he quickly looked away. Yeah, let's go. Excuse me. He nodded, turned and left, taking Ethan. A father shouldn't feel jealous of his son, but my blood boiled. That wasn't a son's look. It was the look of, well, you know, it made me ashamed, and it made me angry, but it also made me realize something. I cared about Jennifer a lot more than I thought. The silence continued after they left. Jennifer looked at the coffee in her cup without drinking, uncomfortable. Isabella looked at me worried, questioning with her eyes, and I was angry. Angry at my own son for looking like that, for disrespecting, for making me feel jealous. Son jealousy, something I had never felt. I sat down, took a deep breath, tried to calm down. Jennifer broke the silence, her voice low. Perhaps I should go. No. I was surprised by the firmness of my own voice. You didn't do anything wrong. Stay. She looked at me, her eyes questioning, understanding too, understanding what had happened. understanding the jealousy, the possessiveness, and she smiled slightly. That little smile of hers. "All right, I'll stay." Isabella served more coffee, brought more cake, and the atmosphere gradually returned to normal. But I didn't forget. I didn't forget the way Michael had looked, and I was going to talk to him. I was going to make it clear. He was a married man. Jennifer, to disguise, said that my coffee was exactly like hers, that the lands were neighbors, that the soil was the same, that we were competitors, producing the same product, competing in the same market. I laughed, saying that competitors could be friends, could help each other, could grow together. She agreed with that look of hers that said more than words. Soon Isabella also said goodbye, picked up her granddaughter, said she was going to her house, that Thomas had returned, waved to Jennifer, gently, and left. We were left alone, she and I, on the porch. In the silence, she was quiet for a while, looking at where Isabella had gone. Then she looked at me, asked if Isabella had been born like that, mute, unable to speak. My heart tightened, as it always did when someone asked about it. I took a deep breath and told her. I told her everything. Everything you already know. Finally, I told her about the doctors, the treatments, the attempts that nothing had worked, about having accepted it, about having learned to love my daughter the way she was. Jennifer was silent, processing, her eyes filled with tears. Then she stood up, came to me, approached, and hugged me tightly, pressed her face to my chest, her arms around me. I froze, didn't know what to do, but little by little, I raised my arms and hugged her back. I held her, felt her body against mine, soft, warm, alive. She whispered in my ear, apologized. I asked why. She said she knew her feelings were changing for me, that she was starting to feel things she shouldn't, that she was getting attached, but that after what I had told her, after knowing the suffering I had endured, she would stop thinking foolish thoughts, would stop hoping, and would accept that I still loved Grace, that I would always love her, that there was no room for anyone else. My heart almost stopped. She was saying, she was admitting that she had feelings for me, and I, without thinking, without calculating, without considering consequences, held her face, lifted it, looked into her clear eyes, her tear-filled eyes, and told her the truth. I said that I was also feeling it, that I was also changing, that after 24 years of thinking I would never want anyone again, that I would never allow it, I wanted her. I wanted her near. And I said more, don't stop thinking about me, because I can't stop thinking about you either. And then I pulled her close with urgency, with desperation, and kissed her on the mouth. But it wasn't a gentle kiss. It wasn't a careful kiss. It was hunger. It was wild desire. We crossed the living room, bumping into furniture, knocking things over. I didn't care. I just wanted to get to the bedroom. I just wanted her. We stumbled up the stairs, kissing. I reached the bedroom, threw her onto the bed, and there I had proof that I was still alive. I was blind with passion for that woman. Night fell, and we didn't stop. She was insatiable. We only stopped when our bodies couldn't take it anymore, when the sun was already starting to rise. She lay on my chest. I caressed her hair in silence. After a while she spoke, her voice tired. "Jim, I need to ask you something. Anything. It's a secret for now. No one can know. Not yet." "Why?" She sighed. "Because you have children. Because we barely know each other. Because people will talk, they'll judge. I don't care what people will say, but I do. Let's have this time, just ours, before everyone interferes." I took a deep breath. I didn't like it, but I understood. "All right, secret for now." She smiled, kissed my chest. "Thank you." We slept in each other's arms. A few hours, but we slept. When we woke up, the sun was already high. It must have been around 7 a.m. She got up, dressed, fixed her hair. "I need to go before anyone sees me here." I agreed, but I didn't want her to. I wanted her to stay. I wanted to wake up with her every day. We went downstairs together, me in front, her behind, checking if anyone was in the house. It seemed like no one was. The house was quiet. We went to the door. She picked up her hat, was about to leave. I approached, kissed her again, with desire, with possessiveness, and it was at that moment that I heard the voice. "So, you two are together?" Caught. After a night of passion that rekindled his life, James is confronted by his own son. This is the moment his new secret life crashes into his old one. Stay with us to see how the family reacts to James's second chance at love. I froze. I turned. It was Michael standing there, arms crossed, looking at us with that judgmental face of his. Jennifer also froze. Looking at my son, I swallowed hard. I turned to him. "And if we are, is there a problem?" My voice came out harsher than I intended, defiant. Michael looked at me, then at her, then at me again, and gave a little smirk. That smirk of his that I knew well, half mocking, half sarcastic. "No problem at all, Dad. I just found it curious, you being so proper, such a moral example, hiding a woman." "I'm not hiding anything." "Then why is she leaving secretly?" I was speechless. Jennifer spoke, her voice firm. "We're not hiding anything, Michael. We just don't want to announce it to the whole world yet. It's different." He laughed. "Of course, whatever you say, but everyone will know. Small town, someone will see, someone will talk." "And let them talk," I replied. "I've been a widower for 24 years. I have the right to have company if I want to." He raised his hands in surrender. "I agree. You have every right. I just find it funny. That's all." He turned his back and left, leaving us there. Jennifer looked at me, worried. "He's going to tell the others." "Probably. At least here at home he will." "And are you okay with that?" I looked at her clear eyes, at her beautiful face. "I am. Damn what they'll say." She smiled. That smile of hers that disarmed me. "Then all right, let's make it official." And that's what we did. We made it official. That day, I no longer hid anything. I arrived at her farm a little later, but this time when I left at the end of the afternoon, I kissed her on the mouth in front of the staff, in front of anyone who wanted to see. The news spread, as it always does in a small town. James Sullivan, a widower for 24 years, was dating Jennifer Peterson, the rich and young widow from the neighboring farm. Tongues wagged. Of course they did. They said I was a foolish old man, that she was after my money, that I had lost my mind, that a beautiful but young woman could only want the inheritance. I didn't care one bit, because those who said that knew nothing. They didn't know that Jennifer was much richer than I was, much richer. Her inheritance was beyond anything I could imagine. Her husband had been a bank owner, not a manager, not an employee, an owner. When he died, he left a fortune, stocks, properties, investments, money in accounts that she would never be able to spend even if she lived for 200 years. My farm was large, successful. I had money, but compared to her, I was poor. Poor. If anyone was after money in that relationship, it was me, not her. But no one stopped to think about that, because we couldn't tell. It was dangerous. You see? And we let it be, because those who needed to know, knew, and those who didn't matter. We dated openly. I went to her house every day. She came to my house on weekends. We went out together, had lunch together, lived together, but we still slept separately, each in our own house. Until in August, 3 months later, she proposed that I move in with her, that I stop that back and forth life every day, that we were already adults, had already been married, had already raised children, that whoever wanted to judge could judge. Sophia had started acting strange after Jennifer appeared, after the relationship became public. She would look at me with a frown. She would give short answers. She avoided being in the same room as Jennifer when she came to visit. Michael explained to me that his wife was jealous of another woman in the house, even if she was her father-in-law's girlfriend. Sophia had trauma from his past, from the other women he had been with before marrying. She never forgot, never fully got over it. And now seeing another woman there, beautiful, well-dressed, moving around the old Kentucky homestead, it bothered her. When I told Jennifer about it, she understood immediately. She said that me moving in with her solved both problems. Sophia would be calm, without another woman in her territory, and we would truly be together. I accepted. In October 1991, I moved into Jennifer's house. I took my clothes, my books, my personal belongings. I started living with her officially as a couple, without a marriage certificate yet, but as a couple. Her children didn't know yet. They lived far away. Anthony and Mark lived in New York. They talked on the phone, but I had never been mentioned. Until December arrived, Christmas. Jennifer said she wanted to spend it with her children in the city and wanted to take me to introduce me, to meet them, to make it official for good. We went on December 23. We took the imported pickup truck her husband had left. We drove to the capital. We arrived at Anthony's house. He was 24 years old, married to Elizabeth, with 2 small children, Caleb at 3 years old and Ava at 1 year old. A large, beautiful house in a good neighborhood. When he opened the door and saw me next to his mother, the surprise was visible. Jennifer introduced me as her boyfriend. The silence that fell was heavy. He sized me up from head to toe. Then he shook my hand. We went in. We sat in the living room, had some coffee, and then came the questions. How old was I? He asked if I was a widower. How long ago? How many children did I have? What did I do for a living? I answered everything calmly, honestly, hiding nothing. Then he looked at his mother and asked if she was happy. She smiled, that smile of hers, and said she was very happy. He nodded. He said that was good then, and that was it. He accepted. The next day, we went to Mark's house, the youngest, 22 years old, married to Karen, 1 child. Noah, at 2 years old. Same thing. Introduction, questions, sizing up, acceptance. Neither of them cared about the age difference. And I understood why when they commented among themselves about their father. Jennifer's husband was 30 years older than her. Imagine that. She was 16 and he was 46. So, for them, 18 years was a small difference. It was normal. They even thought their mother liked older men, that it was her type. We spent Christmas together, Jennifer and I, her 2 sons, her 2 daughters-in-law, her 3 grandchildren. The in-laws of her sons and 2 adult cousins came. A lavish dinner, a full house, children running, laughter, presents. Her little grandchildren called me Grandpa Jim. Jennifer got emotional every time, took my hand, squeezed it, grateful. But I felt a bit sad there, not because of her family. They were good people. They welcomed me well. But I missed my children, my family. It was the first Christmas I didn't spend with them, and it hurt more than I expected. Jennifer noticed. Of course, she noticed. She knew me well. She knew when I became too quiet, when I smiled less. After midnight, when I looked at the window with that expression, that night, when we returned to the room Anthony had prepared for us, she hugged me, held me tight, and said she had been selfish, that she had only thought of herself, of her children, and had forgotten that I also had a family, also had children, also had longing. She said that next year it was certain that we would spend Christmas with my family on the farm, with everyone together, that she would get to know everyone properly, because she still hadn't met Daniel and his family. I thanked her, hugged her back, and felt the love grow, because she had understood, had realized, and had plans to stay with me for at least another year. We stayed together for 11 more Christmases, 11 years of happiness, companionship, and love. In January 1993, we officially married. We had a huge party, gathering both families, all my children, all of hers, all the grandchildren, friends, neighbors, staff, a full house, music, abundant food, dancing until sunrise. I was 62 years old, she was 44, marrying again, starting over again, proving that it's never too late. We lived well, very well. We divided our time between the 2 farms, took care of both properties. We traveled too. I saw places I had never dreamed of, beaches, mountains, historic cities. She liked to travel, and I learned to like it too. The grandchildren grew up, hers, mine, all together at the end-of-year parties, running through the horse pastures, playing, growing, becoming people. Those were good years, the best of my life after I lost Grace. Until in 2002, Jennifer fell ill. It started with fatigue, shortness of breath, chest pain. I took her to the doctor. They ran tests, many tests. Her heart was failing. Heart failure, severe, progressive. They admitted her, tried treatment, medication, procedures. Nothing worked. I stayed at the hospital with her day and night, holding her hand, talking, remembering, thanking her for the 11 years we had. She died in March 2002, at 53 years old. In my arms. She didn't want to die. She had told me she wanted more time with me, with our family, and I was widowed again. I returned to my farm, to the old Kentucky homestead, where I had lived my entire life. I couldn't stay in her house. It was hers, always would be. I continued to manage the property with the help of my children and later my grandchildren. But life had become heavier, more painful. Daniel, my doctor son, the most educated, the one who had traveled the world, died in a car accident in 2005, returning from the capital after a shift. And Olivia, my first daughter, died of an illness in 2008. I won't go into details. I can't. It's too much for my old heart. It's too much pain to put into words. Just mentioning their names hurts enough. I prefer to remember them alive. There are some pains, honey, that even at 94, I can't find words for. Losing a wife is one thing. Losing parents is another. But burying your child, that's the wrong order of things. Forgive an old man. I can't go into that detail. It still hurts too much. I buried 2 of my 5 children, and no father should have to bury a child. Now, at 94 years old, as I watch my great-grandchildren play on the lawn right here on this farm, I finally understand. Life isn't about what you own. It's about the people you love. I have buried 2 wives and 2 of my 5 children. The pain is real, but the love I had for Grace, for Jennifer, for my children, is even more real. That is the only legacy that truly endures. It's the one thing no one can take away from you. Thank you for joining me on this journey through memory. If James's story has touched your heart, please comment below with the moment that moved you the most. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to hear more meaningful life stories.